Just that moment where your brain decides whether something is routine or something else. Copy, he said. Any sounds? Signs of struggle? I hesitated. My eyes shifted, the open call still running on my screen. The line hadn't dropped. And now, it wasn't silent anymore. Low voices. More than one. Faint, like they were coming from another room or through a wall. I leaned closer to my headset without thinking. I've got audio, I said slowly. Unconfirmed source. Multiple voices. Another pause. Inside the house? Unit 7 asked. I don't know. That was the truth, because what I was hearing didn't match anything. The voices didn't overlap like normal conversation. They moved around each other, taking turns, like they knew when the other would stop. Can you make out what they're saying? He asked. I focused harder. The voices sharpened just a little. Still distant. Still wrong. But clearer. Don't. A second voice, lower. He's all ready. Then silence again. I felt my stomach twist. Negative. I said, not clearly. That wasn't fully true. But I didn't know how to explain it, because it didn't sound like people talking to each other. It sounded like they were talking about something in the room. Unit 7, proceed with caution. I added, I'm pulling up now. I switched to the other channel again. Still nothing from Unit 12. No static. No breathing. Just gone. But the call, still active. Still feeding me those voices. Dispatch, Unit 7 said. I'm on scene. Copy. What's the status of the caller? I looked at the screen again. Call duration, 11 minutes. Status, active. Caller remains connected. No verbal response. There was a short exhale over the radio. All right, I'm going in. I didn't like how fast he said that. Like he didn't want to give himself time to think. Hold, I said. He stopped. I could hear it in the way his radio went still. Try contact first. I said, verbal, a beat. Then, sheriff's office, he called out. Anyone inside? His voice carried through the mic, echoing faintly. And for a second, the voices in my headset stopped. Completely, like they were listening too. My chest tightened. Repeat, I said quietly. He did, louder this time. Still nothing from inside. But then, a sound, not from his radio. From the call, a door creaking. Slow, heavy, but Unit 7 hadn't moved yet. I felt a cold wave run through me. Unit 7, I said, quickly, be advised, possible interior movement. I haven't entered yet, he replied. I know. That's when it hit me. Whatever I was hearing was ahead of him, or separate from him, or... I didn't finish that thought. I'm going in, he said. Before I could stop him, I heard the shift of his steps. The door opened. Same long creak. Same slow drag. Exactly like the one in my headset. Too exact. Like the same sound playing twice. I'm inside, he said. His voice dropped. Lower now. Careful. What do you see? A pause. Longer this time. Then, nothing. That word didn't sit right. Clarify. I mean, he exhaled slowly. There's stuff here. Furniture. Lights. But it feels... He trailed off. I waited. Empty, he finished. The voices came back in my ear. Softer now. Closer. And clearer. He's not alone. I froze. Unit 7. I said, my voice tight. Are you alone? Yeah. He said immediately. Why? I didn't answer. Because I was hearing at least 2 other voices. Maybe 3. And none of them sounded like him. Proceed room by room. I said instead. Copy. His footsteps started again. Slow. Measured. Each one echoing slightly too long. Like the house was bigger on the inside. The voices followed him. That's when I realized it. They weren't coming from a fixed place. They were moving. Tracking him. Closer now. Don't let him. The words cut off again. Dispatch, he said suddenly. There's something off about the walls. My breath caught. Explain. They're not straight. A long pause. Like they're bending, he added. Just a little. Like heat waves. I felt my grip tighten on the desk. Any sign of Unit 12? No. He turned a corner. I could hear it in the shift of his steps. Then he stopped. Wait! My heart jumped. What is it? I found his radio. Everything in me went still. Location? Hallway floor. Still on. Any sign of him? No. The voices in my headset got louder, layering over each other now. Faster. Urgent. Behind. Don't turn. He's listening. Unit 7. I said quickly, do not turn around. Silence. A long, heavy silence. How did you? He started. Just don't. My voice came out sharper than I meant. He didn't move. I could hear his breathing now. Real breathing. Fast. Human. For a moment, everything lined up. The house. The voices. The call. Him. All in the same rhythm. Then, a new sound from his radio. A second set of footsteps. Soft. Dragging. Right behind him. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. Unit 7. I whispered, walk forward. Slowly. I'm not alone, he said. No, I said, you're not. The dragging steps matched his pace. One step, drag. One step, drag. Closer each time. The voices in my ear dropped to a whisper. It sees him now. Don't let it speak. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Unit 7, I said, if you hear anything at all, do not respond. Too late, he said. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? There was a pause. Then a voice came through his radio. Not his, not mine, but clear, calm, right behind him. Dispatch. My hand slipped on the mic. Identify yourself, I said, but my voice barely held together. The response came immediately. I'm right here. Unit 7 didn't speak, didn't breathe, didn't move. And then, very slowly, his mic picked up the sound of him turning. Just a little. Just enough. Don't, I said, but he already had. There was a long silence. Then, a soft exhale through his radio. Not fear, not panic, just empty. Unit 7? I said. No response. Unit 7, respond. Nothing. And then, the call in my headset changed again. The voices were gone, replaced by a single sound. Breathing. 2 breaths now, perfectly in sync. And one of them was not his. I heard the tone again 3 nights later. That same soft, hollow signal. That means a line is still open. I wasn't even on calls at the time. Just finishing paperwork. Quiet shift. Nothing unusual. The kind of night where your brain finally starts to settle. And then it came through my headset. A faint click, followed by that low, empty hum. Open line. I froze. Slowly, I turned toward my monitor. 1 active call. No caller ID. No location data. Just a blinking status. Active. My stomach tightened before I even touched the keyboard. Because I already knew what I was going to see. Call log reference. Same number. Same case ID. The one we closed. The one we weren't supposed to reopen. My hand hovered over the mouse. For a second, I thought maybe it was a system glitch. Old data looping. That happens sometimes. Rare, but not impossible. But then I noticed the timer. 00:03. 00:04. 00:05. It was counting up. Live. I swallowed. Dispatch. I said quietly, even though I was the only one on this channel. Confirm active line source. No response. Of course not, because I hadn't routed it yet. I was just looking at it, like it might go away if I didn't touch it. It didn't. The line stayed open. Waiting. I pressed the talk key. 911. What is your emergency? For a second, nothing came back. Just that same low hum. And then, breathing. Slow. Familiar. My chest tightened. No! I whispered before I could stop myself. It couldn't be. We logged that phone. Collected it from the scene. I remembered the report clearly. Cracked screen. Mud along the edges. Water damage. Bagged and tagged. Evidence locker. Destroyed after processing. I had signed off on that file myself. So why was it calling me? I leaned closer to the mic. Identify yourself. The breathing continued. Steady, unchanged, like it hadn't heard me, or didn't care. I pulled up the old case file with shaking hands. Unit 12, missing. Unit 7, missing. Residents, cleared. No signs of forced entry. No bodies recovered. Phones recovered. Destroyed. My eyes locked on that last word. Destroyed. The line in my ear crackled slightly. A small shift, like someone adjusting their grip on the phone. I felt my throat go dry. Who is this? I asked again. This time, something answered. Not a full voice. Not clear, but closer than before. Still, I froze. Say again. A long pause. Then, listening, the words stretched thin and wrong, like it didn't belong in a human mouth. I leaned back in my chair slowly. Every instinct told me to disconnect. Log it. Call it a malfunction. But I didn't, because part of me needed to know. Needed to understand what I had sent those men into. I switched channels. Any available unit. Respond to dispatch. Static. Then a voice. Unit 3. Fresh shift. Didn't know the case. Go ahead. I hesitated. My eyes stayed on the screen. On that blinking line. Stand by, I said. I wasn't ready to send someone else. Not yet. Not again. I switched back to the call. The breathing had changed. Faster now. Not panicked, but aware. Like it knew I was paying attention again. You said you're still listening. I said slowly. Listening to what? For a moment, silence. Then, a sound I hadn't heard before. Soft, wet, like something dragging across the floor. My fingers tightened around the desk. That location is cleared. I said more to myself than to it. There's no one there. The line crackled again. Then, a second breath joined the first. My heart skipped. 2. There were 2 now. Perfectly timed. Inhale, exhale, together. I felt that same cold pressure settle in my chest. Who else is there? I asked. No answer. Just those 2 breaths. Then, a third. Fainter. Behind the other 2. My vision blurred for a second. No, I said under my breath. It didn't stop. 3 breaths now. Layered. Stacked. Like they were standing right on top of each other. And then, a voice. Clearer than before. Calmer. You hear us now. I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Because I recognized that voice. Not fully, but enough. There was something in it. A tone. A weight. Like I had heard it through static before. In the background. On that first night. You're not supposed to be there. I said finally. The response came immediately. We're not. A pause. Then, you sent us. My chest tightened. So hard it hurt. I didn't. But I stopped because that wasn't true. I was the one who dispatched them. The one who told them to go inside. The one who stayed here. Safe. Listening. The line filled with a low hum again. But underneath it, I heard something new. A faint clicking. Slow. Deliberate. Like fingers tapping against plastic. Closer each time. What do you want? I asked. The question felt small. Useless. But it was all I had. The breathing stopped. All 3 of them. At once. The silence that followed was heavier than anything before. Then, a whisper. Right against the mic. Stay. My grip tightened. Stay where? No answer. Just that silence again. And then, something shifted on my screen. The call timer. It stopped. Not disconnected. Not dropped. Just stopped. Frozen at 2:17. My heart sank. That was the exact time Unit 12 went inside. I stared at it, trying to make sense of it, trying to find something logical to hold on to. But there was nothing, just that frozen number. And the open line, still active, still waiting. Then, a new sound, not from the call. From my console, a second line lit up. Incoming. Same number. My hand shook as I hovered over it. 2 calls, both active, both from the same source. I answered the second one. Before I could think, before I could stop myself. 911, what is your emergency? For a second, nothing. Then, a voice. My voice. Calm, clear, like a recording. Unit 12, proceed inside. I felt the air leave my lungs. No! I whispered. The recording continued, word for word, exactly how I had said it that night. Be advised, caller remains on the line. The first call in my other ear, one that never ended, started breathing again, slow, patient, waiting, and I realized something then, something that made my hands go cold. The calls weren't repeating. They were stacking, layering, building, like every moment I stayed on the line was being kept, recorded, listened to, and somewhere on the other end, something was still there, still hearing everything, still waiting for the next voice. And this time, it already sounded like me. He didn't move. That's what stayed with me. Not the rain, not the empty road, not even the way my headlights hit him and just stopped. It was the fact that he didn't move. I was halfway down County Road 12 when I saw him, middle of the road, just standing there. No car nearby, no house close enough to make sense. Just him and the rain coming down hard enough to blur the edges of everything. At first, I thought he was walking. That's what your brain does. It fills in motion where there isn't any. But as I got closer, I realized he wasn't going anywhere. I slowed the cruiser, wipers dragging across the windshield, barely keeping up. The beams of my headlights stretched across the wet asphalt, reflecting back at me in long, broken lines. And there he was, dead center, facing away from me. I tapped the horn once. Short, polite, nothing. He didn't flinch, didn't turn, didn't shift his weight. Just stood there, rain soaking through him. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear, not yet, just wrong. I clicked on the overhead lights. Red and blue washed over his back, flickering across the rain. Still nothing. I put the cruiser in park, but didn't get out right away. Something about the way he was standing felt off. Too straight, too still, like he wasn't balancing, like gravity didn't matter to him. I reached for the radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 14. I've got a male subject standing in the roadway on County 12. Non-responsive. A crackle came back. Copy, Unit 14. Any signs of distress? I looked at him again. No visible injuries. Just standing. Make contact and advise. Copy. I hesitated for a second longer. Then I opened the door. The rain hit me immediately. Cold, heavy, loud enough to drown out the smaller sounds. My boots splashed onto the road. Sir, I called out. Sheriff's office. No reaction. I stepped closer. The distance between us felt longer than it should have been. Each step slow, measured. The closer I got, the more something in my head kept repeating, he should have moved by now. Anyone would. At least a glance back. At least a shift. But he didn't. Sir, I said again, louder, I need you to step out of the roadway. Still nothing. I stopped about 10 feet behind him, close enough now to see the details. His clothes were dark, soaked through, clinging to him in a way that made his shape hard to read. His arms hung straight at his sides, not relaxed, just placed there. I felt the first real flicker of unease. Sir, I said, softer now, can you hear me? For a second, I thought I saw his head tilt, just a little, but the rain distorted everything. I couldn't be sure. I took another step forward, 5 feet now, close enough to hear his breathing, except I couldn't. That's when it hit me. There was no movement in his shoulders, no rise, no fall, nothing. I felt my pulse quicken. Dispatch, I said, keeping my voice low. Subject is still non-responsive. Possible medical. Copy. Do you need EMS? I looked at him again. Something about this didn't feel like medical, but I didn't have anything else. Stand by. I stepped closer. 3 feet. The rain ran down his back in steady lines. His hair, if that's what it was flattened against his head, but I couldn't see his face yet. Sir, I said, I'm coming around in front of you, all right? No answer. I moved to the side, slowly, carefully, like I didn't want to startle him, even though he hadn't reacted to anything so far. as I stepped into his line. I stopped. His face, it didn't match. That's the only way I can say it. Everything was there. Eyes, nose, mouth. But it looked arranged, like someone had tried to remember what a face looked like and got close, but not close enough. His eyes were open, too open, staring straight ahead. Not at me, not at anything, just forward. Rain slid over them, but he didn't blink. My stomach turned. "Sir," I said quieter now, "are you hurt?" Nothing, but up close. I could see it. His lips, they were moving, barely, small, tight motions, like he was trying to speak, but no sound came out. I leaned in slightly. What was that? The movement stopped. His lips went still, and for the first time, he turned, not his body, just his head, slow, smooth, too smooth, until he was looking straight at me. I felt something drop in my chest, because now I knew he wasn't ignoring me before. He just hadn't chosen to look yet. His eyes locked onto mine, and stayed there, unblinking. I waited for something, a word, a reaction, anything, but all he did was stare, rain running down his face, collecting at his chin, dripping to the ground. "Sir," I said again, my voice tighter now, "I need you to answer me." His lips moved again. This time, sound came out, soft, thin, like it had to force its way through. "Stay." I leaned closer without thinking. "What?" "Stay." The same word, drawn out, wrong. A chill ran up my arms. "Stay where?" I asked. He didn't answer, just kept looking at me. Then something shifted, not in him, behind him. I glanced past his shoulder. The road stretched out into darkness, empty, but for a second, I thought I saw movement. Farther down, a shape, standing, same height, same stillness. I blinked. It was gone. I looked back at him. He was still watching me, still not blinking. "You're not alone out here, are you?" I asked quietly. His lips twitched, not into a smile. Not exactly. Just something. "You saw..." The words barely formed. My chest tightened. "Who?" I asked. No answer. Instead, he took a step forward. Just one. Slow. Controlled. I instinctively stepped back. "Stay right there," I said. He didn't stop. Another step. Closer now. Too close. I could smell something under the rain. Not rot. Not exactly. Just damp. Old. "Sir," I said sharply, "do not come any closer." He stopped. Finally. But his eyes didn't leave mine. "You came," he said. The words were clearer now. Stronger. And something about that made it worse. "Yeah," I said. "I'm here to help you." A pause. Then, "Not for me?" My breath caught before I could respond. The radio on my shoulder crackled. "Unit 14 status?" The sound broke something. Just enough. I stepped back again. Looked down for half a second to grab the mic. "Dispatch, When I looked back up, he was gone. Just gone. No footsteps. No sound. No direction. The road was empty. Only the rain. Falling steady. Like nothing had ever been there. I stood there for a long moment. Heart racing. Trying to make sense of it. Then, from farther down the road, I saw it again. That shape. Standing. In the exact same position. Not moving. Waiting. And this time, it was facing me. I told myself it was over. That whatever I saw that night, it had an explanation. People disappear. People run. Shock does strange things to the mind. That's what I wrote in the report. Male subject. Unidentified. Left the scene before further contact. Simple. Clean. Finished. But I didn't sleep right after that. Not that night. Not the next one either. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him standing there in the road, not moving, just waiting for me to notice him again. So when my shift came back around, I did something I shouldn't have. I took County Road 12 again. No call, no dispatch, just me driving slower than usual, watching the rain hit the windshield. It wasn't as heavy this time, just a steady drizzle. enough to blur things at a distance, enough to make shapes look like something else. I told myself I was just checking, making sure no one else was out there. That's all. But deep down I knew. I wanted to see if he'd come back. The road stretched out the same way. Long empty. No lights except mine. I kept my eyes locked ahead. Hands tight on the wheel. And then, there he was. Same spot. Same distance. Same stillness. Like nothing had changed. My chest tightened instantly. No, I said under my breath. I slowed the cruiser without thinking. Heart already picking up speed. The headlights reached him and stopped just like before. He didn't move, didn't turn, didn't react. Just stood there facing away. Rain falling around him. Not on him. Around him. I didn't notice that the first night, but now I did. The drops seemed to break slightly before they hit him, like the air around him was off. I swallowed. Dispatch! I said, try and keep my voice steady. Unit 14. I've got a repeat sighting on County 12. Same location. A pause. Repeat of what? I hesitated, because I hadn't filed everything. Not really. Unidentified male standing in roadway. I said, non-responsive. Another pause. You want backup? I looked at him. Still not moving. Still not reacting. No, I said, not yet. I don't know why I said that. Maybe I didn't want anyone else to see it. Maybe I didn't want anyone telling me it wasn't real. I pulled the cruiser to a stop again. Same distance as before. 10, maybe 15 feet. I didn't get out this time. Not right away. Instead, I just watched him, waiting for something to change. Anything. It didn't. Minutes passed. The engine hummed quietly. Wipers dragged back and forth. And he stayed exactly the same. Like he wasn't alive. Like he was placed there. I leaned forward slightly. Something felt different. Subtle. Easy to miss. Then I saw it. The ground. Right beneath him. The road was wet everywhere. Glossy with rain. Reflective. But under his feet. It was dry. Not completely. Just less. Like the water avoided that spot. I felt a slow chill creep up my spine. That's not possible. I whispered. I opened the door. The rain hit me again. Cool. Real. Normal. My boot stepped onto the road. And this time, I watched the ground carefully as I moved. Each step left a mark. Wet prints. Clear. Visible. I kept my eyes down as I walked closer. Then I stopped. 5 feet away. I looked at his feet. Nothing. No prints. No water displacement. No sign he had walked there, or stood there, or existed there at all. My throat went dry. Sir, I said quietly, can you hear me? No response. But this time, I didn't wait for him to turn. I stepped around him again, slow, careful, my eyes lifting inch by inch, until I saw his face. Same as before. Wrong. Close enough to human, but not right. The eyes. Too open, too still, and again, no blinking. Rain slid across them, but they didn't react. I felt my pulse in my ears. You were here last night, I said. No answer, but his lips moved. Barely. You came back. The words came out smoother this time, less broken. That made it worse. I had to check, I said. A small pause. Then, you shouldn't. The sentence hung there, unfinished, like he didn't know how to end it. Why? I asked. For a second, something changed. Not in his face, but behind his eyes, like something deeper had shifted closer to the surface. They see. My chest tightened. Who sees? He didn't answer. Instead, his head tilted slightly, just like the first night. And then, I heard it. Behind me. A soft step. I turned quickly. Nothing. Just the empty road stretching out. But something felt different now. Heavier. Like the space wasn't empty anymore. I turned back to him. You're not alone out here, I said. Not a question this time. A statement. His lips twitched again. You're learning. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. What happens if I stay? I asked. The question slipped out before I could stop it. And for the first time, he smiled. Not wide, not natural, just enough to show that something inside him understood the question. You join. My breath caught. Join what? He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward, one slow step, and I saw it clearly now. His foot touched the ground, but didn't press into it. No weight, no impact, just contact, like a reflection pretending to be real. I stepped back immediately. Stop. He didn't. Another step, closer, same spot. The words came out soft, almost gentle, and then I saw it, over his shoulder, down the road, another figure, standing, same height, same stillness, then another, farther back, then another. My chest tightened. How many are there? I whispered. He didn't look back. Didn't need to. Enough. The words settled heavy in the air. I felt something shift inside me then. Not panic. Not exactly. Something colder. Clearer. If I stayed, I understood. I didn't know how, but I knew I would end up like them. Standing, waiting, in the same place. Forever. I took another step back. Then another. Dispatch. I said quickly, grabbing my radio. I need additional units on County 12. Now. The line crackled. Copy. Units en route. I didn't take my eyes off him. He stopped moving. Just watch me. You'll come back. I shook my head. No, but it didn't sound convincing. Even to me. Same spot. I backed toward the cruiser. Slow. Careful. Every step deliberate. The figures down the road didn't move. But I could feel them. Watching. Waiting. I reached the door. Opened it. Got inside without breaking eye contact. The moment I shut the door, something changed. The weight lifted. Slightly, like I had stepped out of something. I locked the doors. Started the engine. The headlights flickered for a second. And in that brief moment, they were closer. All of them. Not by much, but enough. My hands tightened on the wheel. I put the cruiser in reverse. Pulled back slowly. And as I did, he raised his hand. Not waving. Not stopping me. Just lifting it. Like he was marking something. Claiming something. I didn't wait. I turned the wheel and drove. Faster than I should have. Rain blurring everything behind me. But in the rear view mirror, I could still see them. Standing in the same spot. Not following. Not moving. Just waiting. And something in me knew they weren't waiting for anyone else. They were waiting for me to come back. I wasn't supposed to find the reports. That's what made it worse. If it had been in the system, if it had been something anyone could pull up, I think I could have handled it differently. But it wasn't. It was buried. And I only found it because I couldn't let it go. After that second night, I stopped driving County Road 12. At least, I tried to, but it didn't matter where I went. Every empty road started to feel the same. Every stretch of darkness looked like a place where something might be standing, waiting. So I did the only thing that felt like control. I went digging. Late shift. Quiet desk. No calls coming in. I pulled up old incident logs tied to that road. At first, nothing stood out. Traffic stops. Animal calls. A few accidents. Normal stuff. But I kept going back. Further. Years back. And then, I found the first one. It was short. Too short. Deputy reported unidentified subject in roadway. No contact made. Subject disappeared upon approach. That was it. No follow-up. No investigation. Just closed. I leaned back in my chair. My fingers hovered over the mouse. The date caught my eye. 17 years ago. Same road. Same description. I felt a slow tightening in my chest. Coincidence? I muttered, but I kept scrolling. Another one. 12 years ago. Similar wording. Different deputy. Same ending. Subject disappeared. No further action. Closed. I frowned. 2 could still be nothing. But then, a third. 9 years ago. This one had a little more detail. Deputy described subject as unresponsive and not reacting to light or sound. I sat up straighter. That was exactly how I'd written mine. Exactly. I opened the full report. Read it slowly, carefully, And then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The last line, deputy requested reassignment following incident. Reason, personal. I stared at that word. Personal. No explanation. No detail. Just done. I felt a cold weight settle in my chest. And then I searched the deputy's name. Personnel file. Active until 2 weeks after that report. Then resigned. No reason listed. Just gone. I swallowed. That was 3 now. 3 sightings. Same road. Same behavior. Same ending. I told myself to stop. That I had enough. But I didn't, because something in me needed to know how far back this went. So I kept digging. Further. Deeper into older archives. Some of it wasn't even digital. Scanned documents. Faded text. Harder to read. But they were there. More reports. Different decades. Different names. All describing the same thing. A man in the road. Not moving. Not responding. And always gone when approached. I lost track of time reading them. Each one felt familiar. Too familiar. Like I was reading different versions of the same night. And then I found one that wasn't like the others. Older. Much older. The wording was different. Less formal. Like reports used to be. Deputy wrote. Subject appeared wrong. Not injured. Not intoxicated. Just wrong. I felt my grip tighten. He had seen it too. That same thing I couldn't explain. I kept reading. He spoke. Said I should leave. Said I would come back if I didn't. My chest tightened. The words felt too close. Too exact. I scrolled down. The report ended abruptly. No conclusion. No closure. Just cut off mid-sentence. I frowned. That didn't make sense. Reports don't just end like that. I checked the file status. Incomplete. I searched the deputy's name. And there it was. Same pattern. Requested leave. Then resigned. No explanation. I leaned back slowly. My chair creaked under me. Every case. Every deputy. Same road. Same figure. Same end. They all left. Not transferred. Not promoted. Gone. Like they needed distance. Or couldn't stay. I rubbed my face, trying to clear my head. Okay, I said quietly. There has to be something else. Some kind of note. Some kind of warning. Something I was missing. So I searched for internal memos. Supervisor notes. Anything tied to those cases. That's when I found it. Not a report. Not a formal document. Just a note. Buried deep. No author listed. No date. Just text. Do not engage beyond initial observation. My heart skipped. I leaned closer. Do not approach subject on foot. I felt a slow chill crawl up my spine. Repeat sightings are not coincidence. My throat went dry. Distance is recommended. A long pause. Then the last line. If it speaks, you have already stayed too long. I sat there in silence. The words settled heavy in my chest, because I had already broken every one of those rules. I had approached. I had spoken. And worst of all, I had come back. I pushed back from the desk. The room suddenly felt smaller. Too quiet, like the air had changed. I glanced toward the dark window beside me. My reflection stared back, but for a second, I thought I saw something behind it. A shape, standing, still. I turned quickly. Nothing, just the empty room. I exhaled slowly. Get together, I muttered, but my voice didn't sound convincing. I turned back to the screen. The reports were still there. All of them. Years of the same thing. Ignored. Closed. Buried. And then something new popped up. A notification. Incoming update. I frowned. We don't get updates on archive files. Not like that. I clicked it. A new entry. Time-stamped. Just seconds ago. My chest tightened. I opened it, and my breath caught. It was a report. Same format. Same wording. Same structure. Deputy observed subject in roadway. No response. But the name, it was mine. I felt my hands go cold. No! I whispered. I hadn't filed that. I hadn't written that. I hadn't even. My eyes dropped to the last line. Report status. Pending resignation. I stared at it, trying to understand, trying to find something real to hold on to. And then my radio crackled, soft, unprompted. I hadn't touched it. Unit 14? The voice came through low. Familiar. Same spot. My chest tightened. Slowly, I turned my head toward the window again. And this time, I didn't mistake it. There was something out there, standing, perfectly still, waiting. And I knew it wasn't just on the road anymore. It had followed me back. The address didn't exist. That should have been the end of it. But the calls kept coming. First one came in just after midnight. A man said there was a trailer out past the old service road. Lights on, door open, someone moving inside. Routine enough. I pulled up the address he gave me. Nothing. No listing. No property record. Not even a dirt access point on the county map. I asked him to repeat it. He did. Same thing. Same empty result. Are you sure about the location? I asked. There was a pause on the line. Then he said something that stuck with me. It's not always there. I frowned. What do you mean? Another pause, like he was deciding whether to say it. You'll see it when you're close. The line went quiet after that. No more details. No explanation. He hung up. I sat there for a second, staring at the blank space on the map where that address should have been. Then I logged it anyway. Suspicious activity. Possible trespass. I figured I'd drive out, take a look, clear it. Simple. I didn't think about it again until the second call came in. Same night, same area, different caller. This one sounded older, nervous. Said there was a trailer out past the trees. Said the lights were too bright. Said they didn't look like normal lights. I felt something tighten in my chest. What kind of lights? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, like they're on the inside. That didn't make sense. Sir, can you clarify? But he cut me off. Don't go in there. The words came out fast. Sharp. Then the line went dead. I stared at the screen. 2 calls. Same location. Same thing that didn't exist. That's when it stopped feeling routine. I grabbed my keys. Dispatch, Unit 21. I'm checking a possible structure off the old service road. No listed address. Copy, Unit 21. I didn't wait for more. I was already moving. The road out there isn't used much anymore. Faded lines, cracked pavement, trees growing too close on both sides. The further I drove, the quieter it got. No houses, no lights, just the hum of the engine and the occasional sound of gravel under the tires. I kept checking the GPS. Still nothing, just empty land. I slowed as I reached the turnoff of the service road. It barely looked like a road anymore, more like a break in the trees. I hesitated for a second, then I turned in. The cruiser bumped over uneven ground. Branches brushed along the sides. The headlights cut through the darkness, but only just. It felt like the trees were leaning in closer the deeper I went. I checked the map again. Still blank. No structures. No markers. Nothing. Dispatch, I said, keeping my voice even. I'm on the access road. No visual on any structures yet. Copy. I drove a little further. Then I saw it. At first, I thought it was a reflection, light bouncing off something metallic. But as I moved closer, it stayed. Steady, bright. I slowed the cruiser, heart picking up without a clear reason. And then it came into view. A trailer, sitting in a small clearing, like it had always been there, like it belonged there. But I knew it didn't, because it hadn't been on the map, and it hadn't been there 5 seconds ago. I stopped the cruiser, engine idling, lights pointed straight at it. The trailer looked normal, old, maybe paint worn, steps leading up to the door. But the lights, they weren't coming from windows. There were no windows, not that I could see, but the whole structure glowed faintly, like something inside was pushing light through the walls. I felt a slow chill run through me. Dispatch, I said quietly. I have visual on a trailer. No address. No markings. A pause. Can you confirm location? I glanced at the GPS. Still nothing. Negative. I said, it's not on the system. Silence for a second. Then, proceed with caution. I didn't answer. I was already staring at the door. It was open, just slightly. Enough to see darkness inside. Not light, dark. That didn't match what I was seeing outside. I stepped out of the cruiser. The air felt different. Heavier, quieter. Like the sound didn't travel the same way here. My boots hit the ground. No gravel sound. No crunch. Just soft contact. I frowned. That wasn't right. I took a step forward. Then another. Still no sound. I looked down. The ground looked normal. Dirt, leaves, small rocks. But it didn't react. Didn't shift. Didn't move. Like it wasn't fully there. I swallowed. Sheriff's office. I called out. Anyone inside? No answer. The door creaked slightly. Not opening. Just adjusting. Like something had moved behind it. I felt my grip tighten on my flashlight. I clicked it on. The beam cut through the dim glow, hit the doorway, and stopped. It didn't go inside. It just ended at the threshold, like the light couldn't pass through. I stared at it, tried again. Same result. The beam hit the doorway and flattened, like it was pressing against something invisible. That's not possible, I whispered. I stepped closer, up to the bottom step. The door was right there now, close enough to touch. The light from inside, it didn't spill out. It stayed contained, like it didn't belong to this side. I leaned slightly, trying to see inside, but it was just darkness. Deep, thick, not natural. I raised my hand slowly, moved it toward the doorway, and just before my fingers crossed the threshold, I heard it, a voice, soft, close, from inside. Don't. I froze, my hand still in the air. Identify yourself, I said, my voice tight. No answer, just that silence again. Then a second voice, lower, further back. He's early. My chest tightened. Early? For what? I stepped back, slowly, my eyes locked on the doorway. Dispatch, I said, keeping my voice controlled. I've got possible occupants inside, unresponsive to commands. But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't right, because whatever was inside, it had already responded, just not to rules I understood. The door shifted again, opened a little wider, not by wind, not by movement I could see, just opened, and from that darkness, something changed. The light around the trailer dimmed slightly, like it was being pulled inward, like something inside had turned its attention toward me. I felt it, that focus, heavy, direct, like being watched from very close. Too close. You shouldn't be here, the first voice said again. Clearer now, stronger. I took another step back. Then why are you? I asked. The question slipped out before I could stop it. A long pause followed. Then, we weren't. That answer didn't make anything better. If anything, it made it worse. Because it meant something had put them there, or brought them there, or kept them there. I backed toward the cruiser. Slow, careful. The door stayed open. The darkness didn't move. But I could feel it, watching, waiting, just like something else I had seen before. I reached the door of the cruiser, hand on the handle, and then I looked at the ground one more time. No tracks, not mine, not anyone's, like no one had ever walked here, not even me. I got in quickly, shut the door. The moment it closed, the normal sounds came back. Rain in the distance, wind in the trees, my own breathing. I started the engine, and when I looked back, the trailer was still there, still glowing, still open, like it hadn't changed at all. But something inside me knew it had, and if I stayed any longer, I wouldn't leave the same way I came. The lights were already on before I opened the door. That's what made me step back, because I had seen the inside before. Or, at least, I thought I had. Just darkness. Thick, empty, like nothing was there. But now, light, not spilling out, not leaking through, just sitting inside the trailer, like it had always belonged there. I stood at the bottom step again, staring at that open doorway. Same place, same clearing, but something had shifted, I hadn't meant to come back. That's what I told myself. But the calls didn't stop. 3 more after my first visit. All different voices. All saying the same thing. It's back. Lights are on. Something's moving. So I came back. And now, the darkness was gone. Replaced with a glow that didn't feel right. It wasn't warm. It wasn't harsh. It just existed, like it didn't come from anything. I climbed the steps slowly. Each one felt heavier than it should. My boots still made no sound. Not on the ground. Not on the wood. Nothing reacted to me. That bothered me more than anything. I stopped at the doorway, close enough to feel the air inside. It was warmer, but not in a normal way. More like standing near a machine. Heat without comfort. I raised my flashlight again, clicked it on. The beam hit the threshold, and this time it went through. No resistance, no invisible wall, just light moving into light. That should have felt like relief. It didn't, because it meant something had changed. I stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the sound, a low hum, constant, not loud, but deep, like it was coming from the walls, or under the floor, or both. I turned slowly. The inside of the trailer looked normal, too normal. Small table, 2 chairs, old couch against the wall. Everything placed just right, like someone had arranged it carefully. But there were no wires, no outlets, no visible power source. And still, the lights were on, bright, steady. Every surface seemed to carry that faint glow, not from bulbs, from everywhere. I walked further in, each step slow, measured. My hand hovered near my radio, but I didn't reach for it. Not yet. Something told me it wouldn't help. The hum deepened slightly as I moved. Not louder, just closer, like I was stepping into it. I glanced at the walls. They looked solid, old wood panels, but something about them felt off. Too smooth, too clean. No dust, no marks, no signs of age, like they hadn't been there long. I reached out slowly, pressed my fingers against the wall. Warm, but not from heat, from energy. A faint vibration ran through my hand. I pulled back immediately. That's not possible, I whispered. The hum shifted again, a small change, like it reacted. I turned toward the table. 2 plates sat there, clean, empty, but placed like someone had just finished eating. 2 chairs, one slightly pulled back, the other tucked in. I stepped closer. Something caught my eye, on the edge of the table. A fork, bent, not broken, just wrong, like it had been softened and reshaped. I picked it up carefully. It felt normal, cold, solid, but the shape didn't make sense, like it had been changed from the inside. I set it back down, slowly. The hum pulsed once, stronger. I froze. Listen, it settled again. But now I could hear something else under it. Faint, like distant voices. I turned my head slightly, trying to locate it. It wasn't coming from one place. It was spread out, like it was inside the walls. Stay! The words slipped through the hum. Soft, barely there. My chest tightened. Who's here? I said. My voice sounded small in that space. Swallowed almost immediately. No answer, just the hum. Then, you came back. Same tone as before, same wrong shape to the words. I turned toward the hallway. It hadn't been there before, or maybe I hadn't seen it. A narrow opening leading deeper inside. The light didn't change down there. Same steady glow, same unnatural brightness. But the hum, it was stronger in that direction. I took a step toward it, then stopped. Something in my head told me not to, but something else, something quieter, pulled me forward. I moved slowly, each step deliberate. The floor didn't creak, didn't shift, didn't react, like I wasn't adding weight. Halfway down the hall, the voices got clearer, still layered, still overlapping, but closer. Not alone. He hears it now. Too late. I stopped. My heart was beating faster now, louder in my ears. Show yourselves, I said. The words felt forced, like I was saying them because I had to, not because I believed them. The hum surged, just for a second, then dropped again, and from the end of the hallway, a door closed. I hadn't seen it open, but now it was there, waiting. I stared at it. Every instinct told me to turn around, to leave, to get out while I still could, but my feet didn't move. I stepped closer. The hum grew stronger with each step. My chest felt tight, like the air was heavier here. I reached the door, stood there for a second, listening. The voices were right on the other side now, clear enough to understand. He's inside. He crossed. He stays. My hand lifted slowly, rested on the handle. It was warm, vibrating slightly, like it was alive. I tightened my grip, pulled the door open. The hum stopped, instantly. Complete silence, the kind that presses in. Heavy, unnatural. I looked inside. Empty room. No furniture. No windows. Just light. Same glow. Same steady brightness. But nothing else. I stepped in. Slow. Careful. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, the hum came back. But different. Not around me. Inside me. I felt it in my chest. In my bones. A low vibration that didn't belong there. I turned back toward the hallway. The door was still open, but it looked farther away, like the space had stretched. My breathing quickened. "Okay," I said quietly. "That's enough." I took a step back, toward the door. The hum deepened, pushed against me. Not physical, but strong, resistant. I pushed through it, reached the doorway, stepped out into the hall. The moment I did, the hum dropped again, back to normal, if you could call it that. I turned around. The room behind me was gone. No door, no opening, just a solid wall. Same smooth panels, like nothing had ever been there. My chest tightened. "No," I whispered. I reached out, pressed my hand against it. Solid, warm, vibrating, like the rest. I stepped back slowly, try and make sense of it, trying to find something real. But nothing lined up, nothing made sense. And then the voices came back, closer than before, right behind me. He felt it. I turned sharply. No one there, but the air felt crowded, full, like something was standing just out of sight. "He's part now." My grip tightened. "I'm leaving," I said. No hesitation this time. No second thoughts. I turned and walked back toward the main room. Faster now. The hum followed me, growing stronger with each step, like it didn't want me to go. The front door was still open, same as before. I stepped through it, down the steps. The moment my feet hit the ground, the hum stopped. Completely. The world rushed back in. Wind, distant sound, my own breathing. I turned back once. The trailer stood there, quiet, still, lights glowing faintly through the walls, like nothing had happened. But I knew better, because even out here, away from it, I could still feel something, deep inside, that same vibration. Faint, but there, like it had followed me out, or maybe it had always been there, and I had just learned how to hear it. The sound didn't start right away. That's what makes it harder to explain, because for a few minutes, everything felt almost normal. I was back outside the trailer, door behind me, air moving again, the hum gone, or at least gone from the world around me. But not from me. That part didn't leave. It stayed low in my chest, faint, like something I could almost ignore if I focused hard enough. I stood there longer than I should have, just breathing, trying to settle my thoughts, trying to convince myself I could walk away and be done with it. Then I heard it, a soft sound, from inside the trailer. Not a voice, not the hum, something else, a small shift, like something brushing against wood. I turned slowly. The door was still open, same as before, same quiet glow, but now it felt different. Not waiting, not watching, busy. I took a step closer without thinking. The sound came again, closer this time, a faint scratching. Light, quick, then gone. I stopped at the bottom step, listened, nothing, just the wind behind me, my own breathing. Then another sound, different direction. Further inside, a dull tap, then another, like something moving. Carefully, I felt that tightness return to my chest. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. The sound stopped immediately, like they were listening. That silence pressed in again. Heavy, expecting. I shouldn't have gone back in. I know that, but I did. I climbed the steps again. Slower this time. More careful. Each step felt like a choice I could still undo. Until I reached the doorway. Then it felt like I couldn't. The light inside hadn't changed. Same soft glow. Same unnatural calm. I stepped inside. The hum came back immediately. Soft, steady, but under it, there was again the sound, scratching, faint, from somewhere in the walls. I turned slowly, trying to place it. It moved, not loud, but fast, from one side to the other, then stopped. My eyes locked onto the wall where I had touched it before. Smooth, clean, still vibrating faintly. I stepped closer, pressed my ear against it. The hum filled my head instantly, deep, heavy, and beneath it, movement, tiny, rapid, like something crawling, but too many, too layered, not one thing, several, all moving at once. I pulled back sharply. My heart started to race. That's not possible. I muttered. The sound shifted again, now above me, then behind me, then under the floor. Too fast, too scattered, like it wasn't bound to one place, like it was inside everything. I turned in a slow circle, trying to track it, but every time I focused, it moved, stayed just out of reach. You hear them, the voice came from nowhere, or everywhere. Soft, close. My chest tightened. What are they? I asked. No answer, just the scratching. Faster now, more urgent. The walls seemed to hum louder, or maybe I was just noticing it more. I stepped back toward the center of the room, trying to put space between me and the walls. The sounds followed, not from one direction, from all of them, like I was standing in the middle of it. Then, something new, a heavier sound, a slow drag, from behind the wall near the table. I froze. That was different, bigger, not small, not fast, deliberate. I turned toward it slowly. The wall looked the same, nothing visible, no movement, but the sound, it was right there, just behind the surface. I stepped closer. Every instinct told me to stop, but I didn't. I reached out, placed my hand flat against the wall. The vibration hit me immediately, stronger than before, deeper, and then something pushed back. Not hard, not enough to move my hand, just enough to feel. Pressure from the other side. I jerked my hand away, stepped back fast. My breath came quicker now. What is that? I whispered. The answer came in a whisper. Inside, my eyes widened. Inside what? No answer, but the sound, it changed again. Now it wasn't just behind the walls. It was moving between them. Fast, too fast, like something slipping through spaces that shouldn't exist. The scratching turned into tapping, then into something like knocking from all sides. Ceiling, floor, walls, close, then far, then close again. My head started to spin, trying to follow it. Stop, I said out loud. The word felt weak, useless. The sounds didn't stop. They grew louder, more organized, less random, like they were circling me. I turned again, and that's when I noticed it. The walls, they weren't perfectly flat anymore. Subtle, easy to miss, but they were shifting, breathing, just slightly, like something inside them was pressing outward, then pulling back, pressing, pulling, over and over. My stomach dropped. No, I whispered. The tapping stopped. All at once, dead silence. I held my breath, waiting, listening. Then, a single knock. Right behind me. I turned slowly. The wall there looked smooth, unchanged, but I knew better. I stepped closer. Careful, slow. My hand lifted again, hovered just inches from the surface. Then, it happened. A shape pressed out from the wall, not breaking through, not tearing, just pushing, like something soft behind it was trying to take form. My breath caught in my throat. The shape held for a second, then sank back. Gone. The wall smooth again. I stumbled back. Heart pounding now. Fast. Too fast. They want out. The voice came again, closer than before, right beside my ear. I spun around. Nothing there, but I could feel it. Something close. Watching. Waiting. Were they? I said again, this time louder, more desperate. The answer came slowly. Not one. My chest tightened. Then what? A pause. Then pieces. The words settled heavy in the air. Pieces of what? I didn't ask. I didn't want to know, because something inside me already understood. Too many movements. Too many sounds. Too many directions. Not one thing. Many. Trying to be something. Trying to come together. The walls shifted again. More noticeable now. Pressing outward in small, uneven waves. Like something inside was getting stronger. Or closer. I backed toward the door. Slow. Careful. The sounds followed. But they didn't rush me. Didn't chase. They just stayed close. Always just behind the surface. Don't leave? The whisper came again. Different tone. Almost pleading. I stopped for a second. And that was my mistake. Because in that moment, everything went quiet. No hum. No scratching. No movement. Just silence. Perfect. Total. And in that silence, I heard something else. Not from the walls. From inside me, that same vibration. Stronger now. Clearer. Matching the rhythm of the place. I felt it in my chest. My throat. My head. Like something had synced. No! I said under my breath. The silence broke. All at once. The sounds came back. Louder than before. Faster. Closer. The walls pressed outward again. Shapes forming. Fading. Forming again. I turned and ran. No hesitation this time. Straight for the door. The sounds followed. Not chasing. But rising. Building. Like they were reaching for something. I crossed the threshold. And everything stopped. Instantly. The world outside snapped back into place. Air. Wind. Sound. My breath. I stumbled down the steps. Put distance between me and the trailer. Turned back once. The door was still open. The light still glowing. But now, the walls looked still again. Calm. Like nothing had happened. But I knew better. Because even from here, I could still hear it. Faint. Behind the silence. Scratching. Moving. Waiting. And something told me they weren't trying to get out. They were trying to find a way through. The ground was wet. Mud sticking to my boots. Rain had eased to a drizzle, leaving the smell of cold earth and something else. Metal, faint and sharp. I leaned against my cruiser, trying to shake the tension out of my shoulders. Something about this night felt wrong. Deeper than anything I'd ever seen on patrol. The trailer had been there before. I remembered every detail. The faded siding, the weak porch light that buzzed low, the hum that wasn't from any wires. And now nothing. I rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe the storm had played tricks. But the mud under my feet told me otherwise. I remembered stepping up onto the little porch, feeling that low vibration through the boards, and now the dirt was disturbed, churned up like someone or something had left in a hurry. But where? I crouched down, tracing the prints in the soft dirt. There weren't any. No tire tracks, no footprints. Nothing that could explain how an entire trailer had vanished overnight. My stomach tightened. I radioed it in. Dispatch, I need backup. Now. The location, it's gone. Repeat, gone. My voice sounded too loud, too shaky, even to me. Minutes passed. The static on the line crackled like it was holding its breath. Then came the other cars, headlights slicing through the fog, boots crunching on the wet gravel. My relief was shallow, though, because every officer who stepped out looked as unsettled as I felt. Where is it? One asked, voice careful, like he expected the trailer to suddenly reappear. I tried to explain. I wanted to, but the words tangled in my throat. I told him about the hum, the lights with no power, the movement inside the walls, and then the way it had disappeared. They exchanged glances. One shook his head, muttering, "No way. We just came through here last night. Nothing." I knew I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't. The disturbed dirt was all that remained, churned and wet, scattered like a shallow grave someone had hastily covered. I ran my fingers over it. Still warm, still fresh. Just my reflection in the window, distorted by rain streaks and streetlights. I told myself it was a prank. Someone out there messing with radios. But who? And why only me? The voice continued, calm now, patient, watching. Keep going, keep listening. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just twisted the dial, trying to lose it. Every other frequency was normal, safe, and yet, as soon as I left the channel, I heard it again, closer, almost in my ear, whispering fragments of sentences I didn't understand but felt in my chest. I started recording, phone on the dash, microphone picking up the static hum, every crackle, every whispered word. If this went wrong, if I disappeared tonight, someone would know. Maybe. The minutes stretched. The rain eased slightly, leaving mist curling around the cruiser. And then silence, absolute silence. No hum, no static, no voice. Relief surged through me, but brief, because I knew the silence wasn't empty. It was waiting, like the road ahead, like the shadows in the fog. I reached for the mic again, hesitating. My fingers hovered. I had to know if it would come back. I had to. And then, faint at first, almost a trick of the wind, the voice returned. "You're not done." I froze. Rain sliding off the roof. Tires whispering over wet asphalt. The dashboard light flickering. Somewhere inside the static, I realized this wasn't just a frequency. It was a doorway. And whatever was on the other side, it had found me. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white again, heart racing. I didn't know what would happen next. Couldn't know, but I couldn't stop listening. Not yet, because something in the hum promised it would keep calling, keep waiting, keep testing if I would answer. And I would. I already had. I was alone in the cruiser, fog thick around the headlights, when the radio crackled again. At first, I thought it was just the usual static, the line acting up after the rain. Then the words came, jagged and urgent, cutting through the hum. "Help, can't leave." The voice was familiar, but it shouldn't have been. I'd read the reports. Officer Mason went missing 10 years ago. Officer Delgado vanished in '07. Both cases closed, both bodies never found. And yet, there they were, speaking through my radio, trembling over the airwaves like they'd never left. I gripped the wheel tighter, the leather slicked beneath my palms. My breath came shallow, fogging inside of the window. Rain hammered the roof, a steady drum, almost drowning the voices. Almost, but the crackling persisted, whispering fragments that made no sense, yet hit me like punches I couldn't dodge. "Can't find them." The words drifted in and out of clarity. Mason's voice this time, unmistakable. It carried the same half-panic tone from his last official report, recorded in the department logs. I had studied it for hours before, never imagining I'd hear it live, like he was speaking directly to me from somewhere beyond the world I knew. I tried the mic, fingers shaking. "Unit 4 to 2, identify yourself." My words felt meaningless. The static swallowed them instantly. Then came Delgado's voice, overlapping, urgent, almost pleading. "Don't follow it." I leaned forward, trying to make sense of it all. My eyes scanned the dark road ahead, but there was nothing. Empty trees, wet asphalt, the soft gleam of street signs. And yet I felt eyes on me. Or maybe that was just paranoia. It was hard to tell anymore. I toggled the channel, tried to find a pattern. Anything normal. Each click brought new voices, more officers I had studied in cold case files. Each one gone years, some decades, all calling out fragmented, scared, trapped. And then the realization hit me. The frequency wasn't random. It was feeding, pulling me in, naming me silently with every desperate whisper. I pulled over, trying to ground myself. Rain ran down the windshield in streaks, distorting the glow of nearby lamps. I reached for my notebook, fingers trembling, scribbling names and phrases as they came. It was methodical and human. The voices were lining up, connecting, like a map I wasn't meant to read. "Don't let them take you," Mason again. The fear in his tone made my stomach twist. I remembered reading the autopsy reports, imagining a quiet, tragic disappearance. That image shattered now. They weren't gone, not entirely. The more I listened, the more the voices overlapped, creating patterns in the static. One cried over a missing partner. Another cursed his own disappearance. All spoke warnings I couldn't fully understand. And every time I thought I might get relief by turning the dial, the voices followed, bending the frequencies until I realized there was nowhere to hide. I started recording, pulling my phone from the console, hoping to capture the evidence. Static hissed like steam, voices weaving through it, some coherent, some just screams. The longer I listened, the closer it felt, like the cruiser itself vibrated with their presence, like the air inside was thickening, pressing in. And then, a sound I hadn't anticipated. Not a voice, not a whisper, but footsteps. Faint, deliberate, pacing along the roof, or maybe beneath it. I froze. The rain had softened. But these steps did not belong to the storm. They were precise, almost synchronized with the urgency in the voices, tapping out a rhythm I couldn't escape. I gripped the dash, knuckles tight. The radio static swelled into a low roar, and suddenly I realized something else. These weren't just calls. They were directions. A trail. Every voice added a piece, nudging me somewhere, urging me towards something I didn't want to face. I thought of the missing officers, the cold case files I had memorized. They hadn't just disappeared. They had been pulled in, drawn into the same invisible web that now sought to ensnare me. Each voice a warning, each whisper a tether. I felt their eyes in static, watching, measuring, judging if I was brave enough or foolish enough to follow. I tried stepping out, but the rain soaked my uniform instantly, cold creeping through me. The road behind me was nothing but wet asphalt and fog. No sign of any other car, any human. The radio crackled violently. Mason shouting, Delgado pleading, a chorus of officers long gone converging in impossible harmony. "You have to, don't stop." They spoke simultaneously, overlapping into a maddening harmony. My ears rang, and I realized the voices weren't just coming through the radio. They were surrounding me, inside my head, pressing against my thoughts, bending reality in a way that made me doubt if the cruiser or the road had ever existed alone. I forced myself to breathe, slow and steady, counting each heartbeat. 1, 2, 3. I told myself I was still alive, still human. And yet, the next message sliced through the static, clear as day, and it was addressed to me. "Unit 4-2, it sees you." I stumbled back into the driver's seat, shaking. Rain splattered against the windshield, droplets catching in the dim light of my dashboard. The voices didn't waver. They carried more than panic now. Something else. Curiosity. Patience. Malice. A waiting. I fumbled with the radio, hoping to escape, but every adjustment only made them louder, closer. They knew I was listening, and they liked it. Each voice revealed something new about the past, about the disappearances, about the place where all the missing officers had gone. Then came the whisper that made my blood run cold. Not Mason, not Delgado. Someone else, older, deeper, almost ancient. "You're next if you listen too long." The fog outside thickened, swirling around the headlights. My hand shook on the wheel. I realized the cruiser was no longer mine alone. The voices filled the interior, rattling the mirrors, humming through the radio, and pressing against my mind like a tide I couldn't fight. I tried one last thing. I shut off the engine, killed the radio, slammed the dashboard. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. For a moment, I thought I'd escaped, that the voices were gone. Then, faintly, almost teasing, a single whisper came from somewhere behind the dash, behind the static, behind reason itself. "Keep listening, or you'll never understand why we're gone." And I knew I couldn't stop. I wouldn't. Not yet. Because the moment I tried to turn away, the whispers promised they would return. They would wait, and I would hear them again. I had no choice now. I was already part of the signal. I flicked the radio dial again, hoping to lose the static that had been haunting me all night, but it wouldn't let go. The hiss twisted into words. Low, strained, desperate. "Sheriff, you have to help." My heart stalled. The voice wasn't just any officer. It was Henderson, gone 15 years. Declared dead after that fire on Mill Creek Road. I had memorized the report, every detail. Burned beyond recognition, the official note said. And yet, here he was, calling my name like it was just yesterday. I froze, hand hovering over the mic. My knuckles were white, the vinyl seat beneath me slicked with sweat. The cruiser's engine ticked softly, but it felt like it had become a heartbeat of its own. I wanted to tell myself it was a trick of the static, a phantom replay from the archives. But Henderson's words cut through the noise, crystal clear, urgent. "Don't come here. Please don't respond." The warning made no sense. If he was dead, if the place he spoke of no longer existed, why was he calling me? The map had long ago replaced that stretch of road with a highway bypass. Everything was gone. Nothing remained. And yet, the voice was real. So real that I could feel under my skin, vibrating in the hollow spaces behind my ribs. I tried reasoning. Maybe a prank? Someone using a police scanner, mimicking old recordings. But the tone, the hesitation between each word, that was natural, human, desperate. No one could fake fear like that. The radio hissed again, cutting between bursts of static, and Henderson's voice twisted into something more frantic. They're watching. I can't get out. I pressed the mic to respond, but nothing came. My voice stuck in my throat. Rain pattered against the roof, soft and insistent. The headlights cut through a gray smear of fog, illuminating nothing but empty asphalt, wet and reflective. It felt like the road itself had swallowed the world, leaving me alone with a voice from the past that should not exist. I gripped the wheel harder, realizing the air inside the cruiser had thickened. My chest burned, lungs tight. Henderson's plea was a pull I could not resist, but every instinct screamed to drive away, to leave the memory of that road buried where it belonged. "Sheriff, please hurry." The words were jagged, broken, almost swallowed by static at times, yet I could hear them perfectly. I tried to focus on the sound, to trace the origin, but the radio offered nothing. The signal had no location, no frequency I could triangulate. It was coming from nowhere, and everywhere at once. I forced myself to breathe, one hand on the wheel, one on the mic. The thought that someone, something, could be using the frequency to lure me made my stomach churn. Henderson had called me by name. Only I could hear him. That meant the voice was personal, calculated, targeted. A sudden shift in the static made me jump. I leaned forward, trying to make sense of it. The words had changed. "They're behind you." I swiveled, slow and deliberate, scanning the wet edges of the road. Trees bent under the wind, branches scratching against each other, but nothing moved. No headlights, no figures. Just rain and the endless gray. And yet I felt it. Eyes. Not human, not living, but aware. Waiting. I swallowed hard, trying to convince myself it was fear talking, paranoia amplified by Henderson's voice. But the voice continued, soft now, pleading. "Do not come, do not respond, they'll take you." The warning was layered with urgency and something darker, a command I didn't want to obey, because every fiber of me wanted to go to find him to make sense of it. But obeying might be worse. Ignoring it was no longer an option. The tension built inside my chest like a fist, crushing, insistent. I flicked the radio, trying to silence the voice, but it only got louder. Every static burst carried syllables I didn't understand, a rhythm that twisted to the cruiser's metal frame, vibrating beneath my seat, up my spine, into my skull. It felt like the walls themselves were whispering Henderson's warnings. And then the new detail hit me. Henderson's voice wasn't alone. Faintly, almost beneath the surface, I heard other officers, others long gone. Their whispers were quick, almost overlapping, tangled with the static. Names I recognized, dates I had memorized, cases closed, bodies never found. They weren't calling for help. They were dragging me in, pulling me toward the place that no longer existed. A sudden flicker on the dashboard made me start. The light of the radio display dimmed and brightened, syncing to the rhythm of the voices. It was as if the machine itself were alive, responding to the plea, feeding the fear, orchestrating my panic. Henderson's voice sharpened again. You must not respond. They're waiting for you. I tried to focus on the road, to ground myself, but the mist thickened, curling around the headlights like fingers. Every reflection in the wet asphalt, every shadow between the trees, seemed to bend toward the cruiser, towards me. I wanted to tell myself it was the fog, the rain, the long hours, but that voice had a weight, a presence that no weather could mimic. I thought about what had happened to Henderson, about the fire, about the missing road, a place erased from maps, erased from memory, and yet, through the radio, it screamed into existence. I realized then that the danger wasn't just in the physical world. It was in listening, in knowing that voice had found me, singled me out, and it didn't want to be ignored. I gripped the wheel tighter. My pulse thundered in my ears. Henderson spoke again, quieter now, almost intimate, almost human. If you answer, it will follow you. The phrase lodged in my mind like a splinter. I understood it in a way that terrified me. This wasn't just a call. It was a trap, and I was standing in the center of it, caught between instinct and reason, between life and the unknown. I killed the engine, turned off the radio. Silence slammed into me, sudden and oppressive. But even in that quiet, the memory of Henderson's voice lingered, echoing inside my skull. Every hair on my arms bristled. I felt the weight of attention, something waiting just outside, just beyond understanding. I wanted to move, to drive, to escape, but I knew it was pointless. The moment I tried to flee, I'd hear it again. The voice had marked me, and one day it promised I'd follow the same path Henderson had walked, to a place that no longer existed, yet somehow still called. I sat in the dark, soaked, listening to my own ragged breathing. The rain had stopped, but the fear didn't fade. Henderson's last words lingered. Do not respond, but you already have. And deep down, I knew the signal was still out there, waiting for me to tune in again. The headlights cut through the trees like knives, carving the darkness into sharp edges I could almost touch. I didn't see the car at first, just a glow, unmoving, humming through the fog. But something about it was wrong. Too quiet for a running engine, too deliberate for an accident. I stepped closer, boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. The smell hit me first. Gasoline mixed with damp leaves and something metallic underneath, coppery. My hand hovered over the door handle. The cruiser's engine was still running, low and steady, but the cabin was empty. No keys, no officer, nothing but the steady hum of the idling motor and the faint buzzing of the overhead lights. I called out, voice cracking. Hello? Anyone here? The fog swallowed my words. I circled the vehicle, checking the windows. The passenger seat was pushed back, empty. The radio was on, soft static crawling under the hum of the engine, almost rhythmic. Then, faintly, I thought I heard a voice. Or maybe it was the trees, cracking under the weight of some invisible presence. The air felt thicker around me, sticky, almost alive. My pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed to step back, but I couldn't. Something in the way the car sat there, untouched yet abandoned, kept my feet glued to the mud. I leaned closer to the radio, trying to discern the faint whisper that seemed to thread through the static. It didn't make sense. No one should have been able to leave a car running out here without drawing attention. I reached the door, then paused. Something in the reflection of the side mirror made my stomach twist. For a moment, I thought I saw movement in the back seat, shadowed, shifting, but when I blinked, it was gone. The woods were still, silent except for the engine and the low buzz of the lights. The radio crackled again, louder this time. Not words, just an electric hiss that felt deliberate, like it was trying to communicate. My hand shook as I pressed the PTT button, almost yelling, "Dispatch! Any units near?" Nothing. Static swallowed my words. I stepped back, heart hammering, and noticed the ground. Tracks barely visible, but someone had been here recently, too small for an adult, maybe several sets. They didn't lead away from the car. They went around it, looping like a predator marking its territory. I swallowed hard, trying to force my mind back to logic. Maybe a prank, maybe some kids hiding in the woods, leaving the engine running. But the closer I looked, the more impossible it seemed. The tracks were too clean, too intentional, and the car's door still locked from the inside. A rustle behind me made me whip around. Gun raised, just trees, just fog, but I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't alone. My breath caught in my chest. Each inhale, a ragged scrape against the wet air. The lights inside the car flickered, dipping down for a second, then brightening again. That pulse, the rhythm matched something deep in my chest. I realized it was sinking to my heartbeat. The engine wasn't just running. It was alive. Or someone was alive in control of it, invisible, playing with me. I inched closer to the driver's side, glancing into the mirror again. The reflection was wrong. My own face looked pale, stretched, like it didn't quite belong. Behind me, I thought I saw another figure in the glass, blurred and impossible, ducking out of sight before I could react. The radio crackled again. This time, I swear I heard my name, whispered, dragging through static, curling around the engine hum. Sheriff. I froze. Not a joke, not a prank. I knew that voice, but it wasn't human. Or at least, it was human once, long ago, lost now, transformed into this signal. I tried to speak, to call back, but my mouth felt dry, locked. My hand hovered over the door handle, trembling. Something in the woods moved. Quick, deliberate, impossible to pinpoint. The engine roared slightly, as if sensing my hesitation. Then, the back seat window fogged from the inside, and a handprint appeared. Not smudged, not accidental. Clear, pale, pressed against the glass as if someone or something was trapped just behind it, reaching for me. I stumbled back, tripping over a root, my gun swinging uselessly. The fog seemed to thicken, filling the space between the trees, compressing me, pushing me closer to the car. I could hear the static in the radio now like a whispering chant, urging, mocking, warning. I looked at the tracks again. They were all around me now, circling like they had grown while I wasn't looking. Impossible. The engine was still idling, the lights casting harsh shadows into mist, but the back seat was empty and full at the same time, a contradiction that gnawed at my sanity. A low creak came from inside the car. The seat shifted. The steering wheel turned ever so slightly. I froze, knowing I couldn't see anyone, couldn't see anything, but movement had happened. My rational mind screamed that I was imagining it, but my body refused to lie. The radio hissed, then whispered again. Don't look behind. I wanted to run. Every step back felt heavier, rooted by fear and something older than reason. The fog curled tighter. The shadows deepened and the air hummed. Not just the engine, but something beneath the earth, threading into the wires, into the metal, into me. The car door handle rattled, lightly, not enough to open, not yet, but enough to announce a presence. My pulse raced. I had to choose, investigate or retreat into the dark woods, away from this impossible thing. Every instinct pulled me in both directions. I took a breath and forced my body forward, hands shaking, gripping the door. A flash of reflection caught my eye, another shadow behind me. Not the trees, not fog, something taller, leaning in the light, impossible to identify, then gone as soon as I turned. I flinched at the radio. The static had grown louder, more insistent, almost angry. It pulsed, synced with the trembling of my hands. And then the engine cut, dead. Silence slammed in, heavier than the hum had been, pressing against my ears, my chest. I was alone, I thought, but then in the corner of the driver's side window, faintly etched into the condensation, I saw words forming, scratched with a pressure no one could apply from outside. Come inside. I stumbled back. My legs felt like lead. The force around me was silent again, but the air was different, charged, waiting. The cruiser's lights glowed faintly in the mist, engine cold, yet alive in a way I couldn't explain. And I knew before I could move, before I could even think, that whatever had abandoned this car was still here, watching, patient, waiting for me to step closer. I took another breath, trying to steady myself. Rain began falling softly, wetting my hair and clothes. The path back to the road was swallowed in fog. Every instinct screamed to run, and yet my eyes kept returning to the idling car, the open invitation scratched into the glass, whispering through static I couldn't escape. I didn't know how long I stood there, frozen, wondering if turning my back would make it vanish, or if stepping closer would consume me. The forest seemed endless, the night pressing in from all sides, and the cruiser's presence was the only fixed point in the chaos. And somewhere in the radio, or maybe just my own mind, I heard it again, a faint, low hiss that sounded like laughter or a warning I couldn't tell. The car waited, the engine waited, and whatever had left it was patient. I heard it before I saw it. A subtle creak, the soft scrape of something moving against the seat, low enough that I could have convinced myself it was a wind. But the wind didn't sound deliberate. It didn't pause and shift like it was testing me, weighing me. My flashlight trembled in my hand as I stepped closer, fog curling around the beams, sticking to my clothes like wet gauze. The patrol car sat in the middle of the clearing, engine long since cut, yet the air inside it vibrated with presence. The back window was fogged, streaked with condensation from the night's damp, and I could swear I saw it shift, like someone had traced a finger across it. I swallowed hard, trying to tell myself it was just condensation or a trick of the light. But the sound came again, soft, almost a shuffle, a tiny sigh, and it seemed impatient. I reached for the door handle, slow, deliberate. The metal was cold under my fingers. I paused, heart hammering, thinking of the emptiness I had already checked. Front seat, back seat, under the dashboard. Nothing. I had looked before, and yet the sound persisted, coming from somewhere inside, impossible to locate, like it had no fixed point. I spoke, voice barely a whisper. Hello? Anyone? Nothing but the subtle shifting of the fog, and the scraping again, closer this time. I froze, listening, trying to catch a pattern. My own breathing sounded loud, harsh, and somehow wrong in the quiet. I leaned over, peering into the back seat, flashlight sweeping slowly. Empty, empty, but I could feel it. That subtle pressure at the edge of perception, like the air itself had weight, a shape I couldn't see press against the fabric of reality, making itself known only by sound, by the displacement of air. My mind tried to rationalize. Maybe an animal, maybe a branch fallen into the seat. But the noise moved independently, deliberate, as if exploring the space, testing boundaries. I stepped back, my boots crunching against leaves, the sound too loud, too definite. The shifting stopped immediately, leaving a silence heavier than before. I could feel eyes, or something like them, on my back. I spun, flashlight cutting through the fog, but there was nothing but the trees, skeletal, quiet, and waiting. Another shuffle from inside the car. Closer now. I heard it near the door, then move along the seat toward the window. My hands shook, gripping the flashlight and gun, both useless against whatever this was. The back seat seemed impossibly deep, stretching farther than it should, swallowing shadows in a way that made the car feel larger, unnatural. I leaned closer, heart hammering, trying to see past the fog, past the glass. That's when I caught it. A faint outline, a blur at first, impossible to define. It shifted, more defined for a heartbeat, then gone. My chest tightened. My rational mind screamed there was nothing there, and yet my body knew otherwise. The weight of the unseen pressed down, patient, deliberate. I tried the door again. Locked. I hadn't touched the lock before. It had been fine. Now it resisted, as if holding itself against me. A chill ran up my spine. My flashlight flickered, casting the back seat into uneven shadow. And then the seat itself moved softly, like it had a pulse, like something beneath it breathed. I stumbled back, tripping over a root, barely catching myself. The air felt thick, charged. Static prickled along my arms, hair standing on end. I could hear the shuffle again, slow, deliberate, circling the empty seat. I whispered to myself, trying to convince myself I imagined it. It's empty. There's nothing there. But the scraping continued, faster now, sharper, and for a moment I thought I saw a handprint appear on the inside of the window, then fade, like water soak into the glass. My stomach twisted. This was impossible. The seat was empty. I had checked. Everything was empty. A low hum rose, almost imperceptible at first, then louder, like the car itself was alive, vibrating in resonance with my fear. My flashlight flickered again, and I caught a movement behind me in the mirror, something tall, impossibly thin, bending toward the car, then gone the instant I turned. I pressed my back against the patrol car, trying to calm my shaking hands. The sound from the back seat slowed, then stopped entirely. Silence swallowed the clearing, thick and suffocating. I dared to glance inside. Empty, empty, yet I could feel it there, sitting just out of sight, patient, waiting. The air was colder, denser, pressing into my lungs with each breath. I could hear the faintest rasp, like something exhaling inside the seat, something that didn't belong. My skin prickled with awareness of every shadow. Every leaf trembling in the fog felt like a warning. I thought of retreat, of running into the fog, of calling for backup. But the clearing seemed endless, the fog thick, and the cruiser loomed like a sentinel, its engine silent, but its presence alive, watching, breathing, waiting. The radio in the front seat crackled to life. Static first, then a faint voice, low, almost hesitant. Not a call for help, not a human voice. Something else. Something that carried the weight of a warning. I couldn't make out words, only the insistence. The insistence that I stay, that I notice, that I watch. I felt the movement again, something shifting beneath the seat, closer to the door this time. I couldn't see it, but I knew where it was. I tried to call out, to demand it reveal itself, but my voice caught in my throat. Another handprint appeared on the window, smeared as though pressed and dragged. A shape, impossible to find, lingered just beneath the glass, and I realized whatever it wasn't fully here. Not yet, not entirely, but it existed enough to be aware of me. I stepped back, fumbling for my flashlight, trying to keep the beam steady. Every shadow stretched and bent unnaturally in the mist. The sound of breathing, mine or something else, I couldn't tell, mixed with the shifting from the back seat. A low, deliberate pulse, moving toward me in rhythm with my own heart. I forced myself to step forward again. I had to know. I had to see. I pressed the handle, trying to open the door, just a crack, enough to peer inside. The seat shifted instantly, almost violently, as if acknowledging my presence. Nothing, empty, and yet the weight of it lingered, pressing into me, into the air, into the fog. My pulse raced, the static from the radio rising again, insistent, insidious. I realized then that the back seat wasn't empty. Not truly. Something had settled there, patient, deliberate, waiting for me to acknowledge it, to see it, to understand it, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. The fog shifted. The trees pressed closer, and the back seat hummed softly, alive with impossible movement. My flashlight flickered, revealing for just a heartbeat the outline of something hunched, watching, unseen, and gone the next. I stumbled back, heart pounding, trapped between fear and curiosity, knowing that whatever waited in that empty back seat had already decided I was part of its game. And the longer I stood there, the more I realized it wasn't done. Not yet. I flipped through the deputy's log like it would make sense. It didn't. Every line, every timestamp, led me deeper into a knot I couldn't untangle. He had been transporting someone, a routine call. They said, but there was no record, no booking, no fingerprints. Nothing beyond a name that didn't exist in any system. I traced the handwriting over and over, the looping letters feeling alive under my fingertips, like the pen itself had trembled when he wrote it. I could feel my stomach tighten as I read. The details were normal at first, pickup time, location, vehicle description, but then the entries shifted subtly, times that didn't make sense, gaps that should have been filled with traffic reports or checkpoint logs. And the more I read, the more it felt like he had been followed, or worse, had been following something. I ran my hand over the page again. The ink seemed darker now, almost wet, even though I knew it was hours old. I closed the binder and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. My mind kept returning to the same question. Who was he transporting? And why did no one remember? My own deputy instinct wanted answers, wanted to find a trail. But the deeper I dove, the more slippery everything became. The logs hinted at a presence, a figure who existed just beyond the edges of reality, like a shadow that refuses to be caught. A sound broke the silence in the office. The old radio by the desk crackled once. A brief pop, then silence. I froze. It was the same sound I'd heard on night shifts years ago. Soft, deliberate static that felt like it was listening. My pulse picked up. I checked the office door. Locked. Windows, nothing. Yet the hair on my arm stood straight, the back of my neck prickling. I knew then that whatever had followed him hadn't left. I went back to the logs. The entries for the missing night repeated the same route 3 times. At first, I thought it was a clerical error. Then I noticed subtle annotations in the margin, small marks, almost like tally lines, counting something invisible. My breath caught. Who or what was being counted? And why had my deputy made these marks? I remembered the call from that night. The dispatcher had mentioned a disturbance in the van, but I'd never connected it. Now it clicked. The van, the transport, the missing paperwork. It all aligned with the weight of the unseen. I could feel it pressing into my chest even now. Just thinking about it, something had been in the back seat with him. Something that shouldn't exist in the files or on the logs. The office lights flickered once, then steadied. I didn't move immediately. My eyes darted to the door, the windows, the radio. The quiet was suffocating, alive with expectation. Then a soft scratching from the binder. My hand froze on the desk. I swore I hadn't touched it. The log slid slightly, like nudged by an invisible finger. I leaned in closer, gripping the edge of the desk. The handwriting on the last page stared back at me, the loops and lines seeming to twist in ways they hadn't before. A name appeared, not recorded anywhere else. Not in the booking system. Not in the missing persons reports. Just there, inked onto paper by a hand that was no longer in this world. I shivered and leaned back, heart hammering. I realized the deputy hadn't just disappeared. He hadn't checked out, not because he ran, not because he was careless, but because something had claimed the night for itself. Something that doesn't follow rules or record keeping. Something that had been in the back seat the entire time, silent, patient, waiting. I stood and walked to the window, fog pressing against the glass like cold hands. Outside, the yard was empty, but the night seemed heavier, thicker, as if the air itself remembered what had happened. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass, trying to steady myself. The logs had told me a story, but only partially. The rest, the real story, was waiting beyond my sight, just out of reach. I returned to the binder, flipping back a page. Another annotation I hadn't noticed before. A small symbol, almost like a scratch, near the time of the last recorded checkpoint. My stomach sank. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. Someone or something had marked the path, ensuring I'd follow, ensuring I'd see the gaps. The radio crackled again, faint, almost indecipherable. A whisper, maybe a voice, maybe static shaped like one. I couldn't be sure. I leaned in, listening, my heart in my throat. My mind screamed to ignore it, to leave the office, to close the binder and forget. But I couldn't. The night had already chosen me as much as it had chosen him. I opened the next log page, and this time, the words weren't written. They were carved. Small, neat scratches into the paper, spelling out a warning. Do not follow. My hand shook. The ink around the scratches was fresh. Impossible. Hours had passed. No one had been in this office. Something in the room shifted. I felt it, a presence behind me, just past the edge of perception. I turned slowly. Empty, but the shadows near the corner twisted, bending in ways they shouldn't. The air thickened. I realized with sinking certainty that the deputy hadn't just transported someone unknown. He had been transporting something that should not be transported. Something that could reach through paper, through time, through memory. The thought made my stomach twist. And then I noticed it. Another annotation, faint, almost invisible under the lamplight. A trail, leading from one page to another. a breadcrumb of madness that the deputy had left behind. The more I traced it, the more I felt the shape of the back seat, the van, the night itself pressing closer. I realized then that whatever had claimed him wasn't done. The logs were alive, in a way, whispering, hinting, demanding I continue the path he never completed. My pulse raced, the air grew thick, the office shadows deepened. I couldn't leave, couldn't ignore it. I had to follow, had to see, had to understand why he never checked out, and what waited in the back seat that was never booked. I reached for the binder again, my hands trembling, knowing the next page would change everything. The night outside pressed harder against the windows, impatient, and I understood. The deputy's last ride wasn't over, and neither was mine. I opened the cell door and froze before even stepping inside. There he was, sitting on a narrow bench like he belonged there, but I knew he didn't. The cameras hadn't recorded anyone entering. The intake log didn't show a name. Nothing. It was as if the night itself had spat him into existence. I swallowed hard, tried to find the words, but my throat felt dry. His eyes were calm, unnervingly still, and when he looked at me, I felt my stomach twist. There was no fear, no plea, just a quiet intensity that made me take a step back. Who was he, and how had he gotten here without a record? The air in the holding cell smelled faintly of bleach and something else, metallic and cold. I stepped closer, cautiously, listening for any hint of movement beyond the man. Nothing, just the hum of the fluorescent light overhead, flickering ever so slightly. I reached for my radio, ready to call it in, but the moment I lifted it, the static crackled sharply, almost as if the device resented the interruption. I tried to make conversation. "Sir, do you know where you are?" His lips didn't move. He didn't answer. Just sat there, still. I noted the way the shadows clung to corners, stretching unnaturally toward him. I blinked, and for a moment, I thought the bench beneath him had vanished, leaving only him suspended in the dim light. My pulse quickened. I shook my head. Focus. He's just a man without a record. I checked the intake computer again, scrolling through the last few hours. Nothing unusual at first. Routine arrests, minor disturbances. But then I noticed a blank line in the middle of the logs. No entry, no name, just a gap. My stomach tightened. That gap matched the time he had appeared. Whoever, or whatever he was, he hadn't gone through normal channels. He had slipped past everything. The silence stretched. The hum of the lights grew louder in my ears. I tried to find a rational explanation. Maybe a transfer error? A missing booking slip? But nothing fit. No paperwork. No camera footage. No paperwork trail. It was impossible. And yet there he was, watching me with those calm, dark eyes that seemed to pierce through the fluorescent glow. I stepped back, letting the cell door click shut behind me. The key rattled in the lock. Something about the sound felt wrong, too final, too deliberate. I checked the hall. Empty. The other cells were still occupied. Routine. Their occupants murmuring, restless. But the air around him felt heavier, like it was pressing down, insistent, forcing me to notice him in a way that made my skin crawl. I returned to the monitor, trying to pull footage from the past hour. Every camera feed worked except the cell. The frame covering him was static, black with a faint shimmer, like oil on water. I leaned closer. There was no camera malfunction log, no maintenance note, nothing to explain the feed, except that it was intentionally dark. My chest tightened, and I realized I hadn't been breathing normally. I went back to the holding cell and peered through the glass. He hadn't moved, not once, not even a twitch. And yet I felt a subtle shift, like the air around him was alive, pulsing. The shadows had changed again. Something in the corner seemed to ripple when I blinked, always returning to its shape when I looked directly. I forced myself to step away, telling myself I was overthinking it. I checked the intake log one more time. Names, numbers, fingerprints, all normal, except the blank entry. I scrolled up, tracing every record for patterns, any mistake. Nothing. Every arrest before and after was accounted for. He was the anomaly, the glitch in the system built to catch errors. And I knew, with a sinking certainty, that this anomaly wasn't just paperwork. He was present, real, and yet unreal. I walked back to the cell. The fluorescent light flickered again. I could swear the shadows leaned closer toward him. My hand hovered over the intercom, hesitant. I wanted to speak, to verify he was human, to hear a voice that wasn't my own in that quiet, suffocating hallway. But when I pressed the button, only static answered. I felt a pulse of unease, like the static carried a message I wasn't meant to understand. Something made me step closer again. The faint metallic scent in the air sharpened. I could hear it now, almost imperceptibly, like nails scratching lightly against concrete. I spun around. Empty hall. My chest tightened further. Turning back. He was still there, eyes calm, unblinking. The sound stopped, and for a moment, I wondered if it had ever been real, or if my mind was straining to notice something that wasn't there. I tried another approach, more methodical. I grabbed a flashlight from the desk and swept it over him. Beam across his face, the bench, the walls. Shadows stretched, but nothing moved. No hidden corners, no secret compartments. He remained silent, still almost patient. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, and then I noticed it. The faint scuff marks on the floor, leading from the corner of the cell to the bench. Small, almost invisible unless you look closely. Marks that suggested movement, without any witness, without entry. I stepped back again, mind racing. Every rational explanation fell apart. Every standard procedure I knew offered no comfort. He existed outside the system, outside the rules that bound every arrest, every booking. And the thought that whatever allowed him here might still be present, watching, waiting, it made my stomach knot in ways I hadn't felt in years. The intercom buzzed softly, a low hum beneath the fluorescent flicker. Not a voice, not words, just a vibration that settled in my chest, insistent. I wanted to move, to leave, but something held me. Not fear exactly, something deeper. A pull, like the night itself wanted me to notice, to acknowledge, to understand. I glanced at the other officers in the station, busy with routine, unaware, and I realized with a jolt that this anomaly, the man with no record, was mine to handle, alone, because no one else could see the gap, the stillness, the impossible presence in that small, claustrophobic cell. I took a deep breath and stepped forward again, closer to the glass, tried to measure what made him different. The light flickered one more time, and for a heartbeat, I thought his face blurred, features melting like wax. My pulse spiked, but when my eyes focused again, he was normal, human, calm, empty of expression, yet full of something unspoken. I knew I shouldn't have lingered. Everything in me screamed to follow protocol, to check paperwork, call backup, and log every irregularity. But there was an invisible thread tying him to me, pulling me closer, demanding attention, insisting that I notice the spaces between the facts, the pauses in the intake, the stillness that didn't belong. I stepped back one last time, feeling the weight of the night pressing against the station walls. The fluorescent hum seemed louder, more insistent. My reflection in the glass wavered, and I caught a glimpse of something behind him. I blinked. Nothing. Just him. And yet, I knew the presence hadn't left, had never left. I closed the cell door slowly, key clicking into the lock. My hands shook, lingering on the cold metal. Something was wrong. Not just with the record, not just with the cameras, but with the very space he occupied. The air smelled of metal, and something I couldn't name, something old and waiting. I backed away, staring at the cell, at the man with no record, no intake, no explanation. The world outside the holding area continued, oblivious. But inside, the impossible had taken root. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was only the beginning, because he wasn't booked. He wasn't supposed to exist. And yet, here he was, waiting, watching, silent. I approached the cell again, trying to make sense of it all, but the air felt heavier tonight. The hum of the fluorescent lights was louder somehow, almost rhythmic, like it was keeping time with my heartbeat. I didn't expect him to move, but when I glanced at him, I froze. His head was tilted slightly, as if listening for something I couldn't hear. I reached for the monitor to check the cameras. What I saw made me step back. The feed from the cell was glitching, small flickers, static creeping along the edges of the frame. I squinted, thinking it was just a camera error, but every time he raised his eyes, even slightly, the image broke completely. A flicker, a distortion, like reality itself refused to show him properly. My hand shook as I tried to zoom in, and for a second, the monitor went black. I told myself it had to be interference, old wiring, electrical issues, but when I checked the other cells, every camera worked perfectly. No static, no glitching, just his. And every time he moved, even a slight glance, the camera refused to cooperate. It was as if something in that room, or in him, was erasing itself from the record. I leaned closer to the glass, watching his face. Or at least I tried. There was nothing to see. Every flicker of light, every shimmer of his shadow, seemed to avoid the features. His eyes, when he lifted them, were just dark shapes. The face beneath was a void. I couldn't make out a nose, mouth, or chin, just an outline that shifted when I blinked. My stomach twisted. I'd seen a lot in this job, but this was something else, something impossible. I stepped back and grabbed my flashlight, sweeping it across the cell. Shadows stretched and bent unnaturally, clinging to the corners. I noticed the wall behind him flicker too, the paint rippling like it was wet, though I knew it wasn't. The light shouldn't have caused it. And yet, each time he moved, even slightly, the air around him seemed to ripple like heat over asphalt, distorting the room. I tried talking cautiously. "Sir, do you understand me?" His head tilted, faintly, just enough for me to see nothing. No eyes reflecting the light, no features at all. And when he straightened, the camera feed glitched so badly the image fragmented into black and white streaks. I leaned in, heart hammering. The more he looked at me, the less he existed on the monitor. I checked the logs, try and find any pattern. Intake, security, transfer, every detail was normal except him. No record, no history, no explanation. And now, whatever this was, it wasn't just avoiding documentation. It was avoiding me, avoiding proof. I felt exposed, like I was standing in front of something that refused to be seen, and the knowledge that I was the only one who could perceive it made my chest tighten. I stepped back, letting the key rattle in my hand. The motion felt loud in the quiet hall. I glanced at the other officers, busy with their rounds, unaware of the anomaly in their midst, and I realized that I could tell them nothing. No footage, no feature, nothing to show, and the thought of trying to explain this made the back of my neck prickle. I returned to the cell door and peered in again. The air was still, but I felt the pull, the subtle pressure that wasn't physical, the kind of presence that hums beneath your skin, making every hair on your arm stand up. I tried to measure it, but I couldn't. Every time he moved, it felt like he was folding the room around him, stretching it, warping it. The static from the monitor buzzed faintly behind me. I turned. Nothing, just the hum of fluorescent lights. But when I looked back, he was staring, or at least his head was turned toward me, and the shadows in the corners had shifted closer. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Who are you? Where did you come from?" No response, just stillness, and the camera, again, failing, the static creeping over the image like ink in water. I realized sharply that he would never let himself be fully seen. Not for me, not for anyone. Every angle, every camera, every reflection, he would remain a void, unrecorded, unreadable. I felt a pulse of frustration and fear. How could I act? How could I report him if no one else could see? I walked closer, peering through the glass. The flicker in the shadows intensified, bending light, twisting the small space of the cell. I could see nothing of his face, and yet I felt eyes on me, a focus that went beyond sight. And then, for a heartbeat, I thought I saw a movement behind him. Not human movement, more like the air bending, shifting around a weight that shouldn't exist. I blinked. Nothing. Just him. I stepped back again, my hands trembling. The thought hit me with full force. He wasn't here for processing. He wasn't here to be booked or held. He existed in a space that the system couldn't reach. And every time I tried to document him, to prove him real, the universe itself seemed to refuse. My mind raced. If he couldn't be recorded, couldn't be seen, then how long before I started questioning my own perception? I checked the monitor again, hoping for a normal image, hoping for clarity. But it was worse. The feed was fragmented, glitches and static running across the frame. The outline of him barely perceptible, like he was bleeding out of existence. And I realized something else. The longer I stared, the more I felt a pressure in my chest. A tightening that wasn't fear exactly, but something close, something deeper. Almost like the night itself was wrapping around me. I tried to speak, to call for backup, to ask anyone for advice, but my voice caught in my throat, and when I turned back, he had shifted, almost imperceptibly, to another part of the bench. No footprints, no scuff marks, nothing, just a faint disturbance in the air where he had been, the subtle bending of light, and the camera, again, refusing to show him fully. I took a slow step back, trying to breathe, the hum of the lights, the subtle vibration in the floor, the flicker of the static, it all pressing on me, and yet I couldn't leave. Not yet. There was something about him, something in that impossibility, that demanded attention, that demanded I noticed the spaces between reality and absence. I tried to force a sense of control. I documented the glitching monitor, noted the blank logs, the missing intake, but every note felt inadequate, like trying to trap water in a jar. He wouldn't be contained. He couldn't be fully seen, fully recorded, fully understood. And with that realization, a new fear grew. If I couldn't document him, couldn't show him, couldn't explain him, how long before no one believed me at all? I stepped back once more, letting the key rattle against the door frame. Shadows clung to the corners of the cell like ink, bending toward him. The fluorescent light flickered and hummed, and I felt in my chest again, the weight of something that wasn't supposed to exist. And for the first time, I wondered if this was more than a man. If he was something older, something that couldn't be captured, something that refused to be seen. I left the hall slowly, eyes on the cell the entire time. The static buzzed faintly in my ears, a reminder that he remained, unseen, unrecorded, waiting. And I knew that no matter what I did, no matter what I reported, he would never show his face. Not to me, not to anyone. The impossible presence had claimed its space, and I was only a witness. And as I closed the door behind me, a single thought echoed in my mind, chilling and inescapable. What happens when the unseen refuses to leave? I came back to the hallway later that night, keys jingling in my hand, hoping for some normalcy, some closure. The fluorescent lights flickered intermittently, throwing long shadows across the linoleum floor. That's when I saw him. He was standing there, not inside the cell, not crouched or hiding, just standing in the hallway, a few steps from the locked door that should have held him. My first thought was disbelief. The cell hadn't been opened. I double-checked. Deadbolts, locks, surveillance logs. They all said it was secure. Yet here he was, perfectly upright, motionless, staring down the hall as if he'd been waiting. I froze, unsure whether to call out or retreat. The air was different here, heavy, like the weight of someone's gaze could press on your chest. And he didn't move when I approached, didn't flinch, didn't blink. The hallway seemed to stretch behind him, shadows pooling unnaturally in the corners. I reached for the radio, my voice tight. Unit 2 to control. You need to see this. Prisoner, he's outside his cell. Static answered me, then silence. I glanced back at him, expecting some reaction, but there was none. It was like he existed in the hallway, but not in time the way I did. I took a cautious step closer. My shoes squeaked against the linoleum, and it felt absurdly loud. The echo bounced, stretched, swallowed by the dark at the end of the hall. He didn't move, and yet the shadows around him shifted, curling toward the walls, not naturally, not how light and dark usually work. I could feel it in my chest, an almost magnetic pull, like the room itself was bending toward him. I tried the keys again. The cell was still locked, bolted, secure, and yet he had stepped out. I turned to the surveillance monitor in the small officer's nook, expecting to see footage, proof, anything. But the feed from the cell had gone blank. Black. Not frozen, not glitching, just gone, like the camera couldn't register him anymore. And when I glanced back, He had shifted slightly, not his body, not in a human way, but the space around him rippled. I swallowed, my throat dry. How are you out? I muttered. No answer. I stepped closer, the fluorescent hum making my skin crawl. He remained still, but I felt the pull stronger now, like he was drawing the hallway into himself. My mind raced. Was this real? Was I hallucinating? I wasn't tired, not that exhausted. And yet, the rules of reality were bending. I circled him slowly, keeping my distance. The hallway lights flickered again, revealing more than shadows. Floor tiles behind him shimmered, warped, like reflections in water. I realized then, wherever he stood, the world seemed to hesitate. The air itself was hesitant, bending around him. I wanted to turn and call for backup, but my hands froze. My mind was shouting to leave, but some inexplicable thread, kept my feet rooted. I tried to make sense of it. Maybe he'd found a weakness in the lock, a flaw in the system. But that didn't explain the monitor, didn't explain the shadows, the bending light, the pull in my chest. Every step I took closer, the pull intensified. My heartbeat thrummed in my ears, louder than the fluorescent buzz. And I realized sharply I wasn't walking toward him. He was drawing me. The smell hit next. Faint at first, like wet earth after rain. But there was something else, metallic, coppery. Blood? No, not blood. Something older, deeper, that memory alone couldn't place. My stomach knotted. The air smelled heavier where he stood, and I felt it seep into my lungs. I gagged slightly, my hand flying in my mouth, but he didn't react. Nothing stirred except the hallway. Bending, waiting. I tried the radio again. Control? The static cut me off before I could finish, and that's when I noticed it. The other doors in the hall, all locked, all secured, reflected him. Not his face, just an outline, a silhouette. Every reflective surface in the hallway captured him. Yet nothing solid appeared, like the world was showing me proof, and then immediately taking it back. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I took another step, forcing myself to focus. The keys felt heavier in my hand. I remember my training. Approach slowly, maintain control, but control was gone. The hallway was alive with him. Shadows moving, light stretching, the faint hum growing, almost like a voice, but not human. I could almost hear breathing, long, slow, measured, though no one else was there. I tried to rationalize. Maybe someone left the door unlocked, a mistake, but that didn't explain his presence. The bending light, the empty monitor, the metallic smell. And when I glanced down the hall, I saw the exit door, far too distant for him to have walked there unnoticed. But he was somehow closer, not moving, yet gaining on me. I stopped, my back pressed against the wall, trying to ground myself. I blinked, and the hallway seemed longer, wider. He remained, still upright, still looking. I realized that his gaze wasn't on me. It was beyond me, further down the hall, through me, and the static from the monitor seemed to echo here in real space, vibrating against the linoleum. I swallowed hard, trying to find some courage. "Who are you?" I whispered, voice barely audible over the hum. Nothing, and yet the pressure in the hall intensified. I could feel it in my chest, my jaw, my hands. It was like the building itself recognized him, bending around him, yielding. I circled back slowly, keeping him in sight. Every time I shifted, the hallway seemed to shift too, shadows pulling ahead of him, stretching unnaturally. My flashlight trembled slightly in my hand. I tried to focus the beam on him, but it bent, refracted strangely, always avoiding his face. And I realized I would never see him fully. Not in light, not in camera, not even in reflection. He existed only half in our world, only half in ours. I tried to step forward closer, forcing myself to act. The pull in the hallway became unbearable, like walking through water you couldn't see, but couldn't avoid. My heart pounded. My breath came quick. And then I noticed a flicker, a detail I hadn't seen before. His shadow. It wasn't cast on the floor. It moved independently, curling against the walls, stretching impossibly, flicking like a living thing. I stumbled back, letting the keys fall noisily to the floor. The sound seemed to make the world shiver. The shadows pulled back slightly, recoiling, but he remained, and the thought hit me full force. If I left now, I might not get another chance to see him. Not truly, and yet, staying felt like stepping further into something I could never escape. I forced myself to breathe, counting to 10. The hallway calmed slightly, the hum steadying, shadows settling. Almost, and I realized with a flicker of clarity that he wasn't dangerous in the usual sense. He was something else, a presence, a force. And forces like this don't follow our rules. They wait, they observe, they choose. And tonight, I was chosen. I crouched to pick up the keys, keeping my eyes on him. Each flicker of light, each stretching shadow, each pull in the air reminded me that reality was malleable here. I didn't understand how he had gotten out. I didn't understand what he was. But one thing was clear. The hallway, the cell, the building itself, none of it belonged to me tonight. It belonged to him. And as I stood, keys in hand, trying to ground myself, he took a single step forward. Not fast, not humanly measured, just forward. The shadows stretched in anticipation, and I realized the truth I couldn't shake. The cell had never held him. It had never meant to. He remained in the hall, motionless again, yet somehow advancing, and I understood fully then, nothing I did mattered. I could lock doors, check logs, call for backup. None of it would contain him. None of it would stop what came next. I backed slowly toward the exit, heart hammering. The hallway seemed endless, the shadows clinging closer. And just before I reached the door, I looked back one last time. He was there, waiting, watching, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that the cell was never the prison. The hallway was. And I realized then that the next time I saw him, it wouldn't be on camera. It wouldn't be on a log. It wouldn't be in a reflection. It would be me and him alone in the hallway. And the thought left a hollow ache in my chest. Something impossible had entered my world. Something I couldn't record. Something I couldn't escape. I reached the exit, hands trembling on the handle. The fluorescent lights flickered one last time, casting long shadows down the hall. He stood perfectly still, a dark silhouette that refused to be fully seen, fully understood. And as I pulled the door open and stepped out, I knew the hallway would wait, and he would wait too. And somewhere deep inside, I couldn't shake the final question. If the hallway had claimed him once, what would it claim next? I arrived early that morning, before the sun had even begun to cut through the heavy fog outside. The station smelled like old coffee and disinfectant, the usual comforting combination, except something felt off. The holding cell was empty. I froze, not because it was empty, but because it should have stayed that way. I was certain I'd seen him the night before, the way he'd stood in the hallway, bending the light and shadow around him. It wasn't something I could forget. And now, the cell was silent, still and locked, but no one was inside. I scanned the logs first. Deputy reports, surveillance footage, intake sheets. My hands shook as I typed in his name. Nothing came up. Blank. No record of arrival. No record of transport. No report of his presence anywhere. It was as if he'd never existed in the system. My stomach twisted, a cold knot forming at the pit. I knew what I'd seen. I remembered every detail. Yet here, on every screen and in every folder, he was gone. I went to the booking area. The fingerprints, the paperwork, the process forms. Nothing, every digital trail had been wiped. And yet, my memory was vivid. I could see him clearly. His silhouette bending the hallway around him, his shadow stretching impossibly against the walls, the pull in the air when I tried to approach. How could all of that vanish? I thought about calling my supervisor, explaining it as a mistake, a prank, maybe a hallucination, but I couldn't lie to myself. I knew what I'd seen. The question gnawed at me. If he wasn't in the logs, where had he gone? Or did someone or something simply disappeared? The hallway felt different that morning. Empty, normal, but I knew better. I could still feel the residue, the lingering weight of his presence, like a cold shadow pressed against my chest. I walked past the cell slowly, my boots echoing against the linoleum. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to pretend nothing had happened, but I needed answers. I had to understand how someone could exist in our world, and then be erased completely. I checked the transport logs again. Nothing. Vehicle inspections, GPS tracks, fuel logs, every bit of evidence suggested he had never been moved. No stops, no entries, no exits. And yet, I remembered clearly the way he had stood in the hallway, unmoving, almost waiting. For what? I couldn't say. And that question grew heavier with every step. I moved through the station, peering at the surveillance monitors. Cameras that had captured him before now showed empty corridors. Nothing anomalous, nothing unusual. The digital files confirmed it. No figure, no shadow, no bending light. And yet, my memory screamed at me, insisting he had been there. I rubbed my eyes. Was it possible I'd imagined it all? No, I couldn't dismiss it. I could feel the unnatural weight, the pull of him lingering in the air. I found myself staring at the hall again, the one where I'd last seen him. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting their familiar sterile glow. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I stepped closer, my fingers brushing the wall, half expecting him to appear, half hoping he wouldn't. And that's when I noticed it. Tiny scratches on the floor, thin, shallow marks that hadn't been there before. They led away from the cell toward the back doors of the station. I leaned closer, heart hammering. They were too precise to be accidental, too deliberate to be ignored. I followed the marks outside, into morning fog. The air was damp, cool, and heavy with silence. No birds, no wind, just a faint echo of my own boots. And there, at the edge of the parking lot, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The tire tracks from the patrol car were smudged, blurred, as if the vehicle had vanished while in motion. The engine noise, the running lights, they were gone, as if erased from reality. I stood frozen, tracing the tracks with my eyes, wondering how it could happen. No GPS ping, no record departure, no witnesses. It was as if the world had simply swallowed him, erased him from existence entirely. And then the thought hit me. If he could vanish like this, what else could disappear? What other rules of our reality did he bend without a thought? I returned to the station, desperate for any clue. The files, the logs, even the cameras, they were all blank. My colleagues didn't notice anything unusual. No one else remembered him. It was as if I alone had seen him, as if the world had decided he shouldn't exist. I felt a cold isolation wash over me, heavier than fear, heavier than doubt. I was alone in remembering. I tried to rationalize. Maybe he had been transferred to another jurisdiction. Maybe it was a clerical error. But nothing made sense. There was no paperwork, no communications, no record of any contact with neighboring stations. And yet, the feeling of his presence lingered. Everywhere I went, I felt it pressing slightly against my awareness, just at the edge of perception, teasing me with a memory the world denied. I went back to the hallway one last time. My flashlight cast its beam along the walls. The floor was clean, the cell locked, the air still. Yet in my mind, I saw him. I could see the way the light bent around him, the way his shadow stretched and recoiled, the unnatural pause in the hallway itself. And I realized then he had been here and he had left, but the world itself seemed to deny it. A thought occurred to me, sharp and unwelcome. If he could be erased from logs, from cameras, from memory, what else could he alter? What else could simply vanish? And I felt a shiver of dread creep down my spine. I left the station that morning with more questions than answers. The fog outside was thick, pressing against the patrol car's windshield, blurring the world beyond. I kept glancing at the mirrors, half expecting to see him standing there, bending the light, watching silently. But there was nothing, just fog, just silence. And yet, I knew it wasn't over. I knew the station itself, the hallways, the shadows. They remembered him. They remembered the pull, the weight, the unnatural presence. And I knew, deep down, that one day he would return. Or maybe he had never left at all. As I drove away, the fog swallowing the patrol car, I realized something far more terrifying. Reality itself could no longer be trusted. What had been seen could be erased. What had been felt could be denied. And somewhere, in some space between the walls and shadows, he waited. waiting for the next moment when the world would allow him to step back into existence. And I knew that when he did, no logs, no cameras, no files would record it. Only memory would remain. Only me, the question that gnawed at me as I drove through the fog. If the world could erase him so easily, what could it do to me? I pulled up to the edge of the forest, just as the last remnants of daylight were fading. The signs were old, rusted, the paint peeling in long, curling strips. Do not cross after dark. I'd driven this route 100 times, past these exact trees. But tonight felt different. The shadows were heavier, thicker, pressing in closer than usual, and the air smelled damp, almost sweet, like rot and soil mixed together. The radio crackled once, a faint pop that didn't belong, but there was no voice. I adjusted the dial, telling myself it was just interference. My boots hit the dirt road as I stepped out, flashlight in hand, the beam cutting through the gathering fog. The forest edge loomed like a black wall, branches clawing at the sky. Something inside me, something that had nothing to do with protocol or procedure, warned me to stay back. I moved along the boundary, tracing a line where the warning signs had been set decades ago. The ground was soft, soaked from recent rain, and my boots left deep impressions. Each step seemed to echo, but not in the normal way. It sounded like the earth itself was humming, low and throaty, vibrating through the soles of my feet. I paused, listening. A snapping twig echoed from deep in the forest, but the sound was wrong. It didn't come from a single point. It seemed everywhere at once. I shined my flashlight into the trees, catching glimpses of shapes that darted just beyond the reach of the beam. Nothing human, not exactly. Shadows that shifted in the corners of my eyes. But when I turned my head fully, there was nothing. My chest tightened. I thought of the missing hikers, the patrols that had never returned, the reports that were buried under unexplained circumstances. All warnings ignored until it was too late. And now I was here, standing on the edge where no one should tread after dark. The fog thickened. My flashlight beam seemed to stretch longer, reaching further into black. But the shapes remained just beyond its light. Something whispered, almost beneath my hearing, like the wind through dry leaves, but with intention. I strained my ears, caught fragments of words, half-formed, unintelligible, but unmistakably deliberate. My heart hammered. I crouched down, examining the dirt. There were footprints, too large to be human, and they ended abruptly, as if whoever or whatever had been walking here had simply lifted off the ground. I followed them with my light, scanning the trees for motion, for a shape, for a clue. Nothing. The air had gone still, too still. No insects, no rustling animals, just silence that pressed against my eardrums. I straightened and saw it, a figure standing just inside the tree line, perfectly still. The fog swirled around it, and I couldn't make out features, just a shape, tall, thin, and impossibly black against the darkness. I raised my radio to call it in. No response. The static swallowed my voice before it left the mic. My fingers tightened on the flashlight. The figure didn't move, but I could feel its awareness. Not awareness like a person noticing me, but more like gravity noticing a small object, pulling it subtly toward the center of its field. I took a cautious step back, then another. The figure remained unmoving, yet I knew it was following every motion. A sound made me freeze, leaves crunching underfoot, but lighter, almost like whispers against the ground. Something brushed the edge of the beam, then nothing. I turned in a slow circle, flashlight trembling, scanning the fog. Shadows bent and shifted unnaturally, as if the trees themselves were alive. My stomach churned. I tried to convince myself it was nerves, the fog playing tricks on me, but deep down I knew better. I moved along the boundary line again, telling myself to keep to the road, to stay in the open. My boots squelched in the mud. I glanced at the signs. Each one seemed older tonight, warped, almost leaning toward the forest, as if bowing to something within. The warning words blurred in the low light. Was I imagining it, or had the letters shifted overnight? Another twig snapped. I spun, flashlight wide. The figure wasn't there anymore. The fog seemed to thicken around the edges of my vision, swallowing the road behind me. I could feel my pulse in my throat. My hands were cold. Every rational thought in me screamed to turn back. but my boots carried me forward, toward the next sign, toward the deeper edge where the forest swallowed the light. The beam of my flashlight caught something metallic. I knelt, brushing away leaves and dirt. It was a badge. Not mine. Not anyone from the station I recognized. Tarnished, scratched, older than anything I'd ever seen. I picked it up. The cold metal burned my fingers. A shiver went down my spine, the kind that didn't leave when I moved. The badge felt like a warning, like someone had left it for me deliberately. But who and why? The whispering started again, low, insistent, circling my head, echoing between the trees. I spun in a slow circle, flashlight beam cutting a path through the fog. Every tree looked the same, yet the forest felt alive, watching, breathing, waiting. I swallowed dry, my mouth gritty. The path ahead twisted impossibly, the trees leaning inward as if corralling me deeper. A memory hit me. Old stories I dismissed as campfire tales. Travelers who vanished, patrols that never returned, footprints that ended in midair. I shivered violently. Was this the same force? The same presence? I stepped forward, trying to rationalize, to convince myself the stories were exaggerated. My boots sank into mud, leaving perfect impressions. The fog swallowed them almost immediately, erasing my proof as if the forest didn't want any evidence of me being here. I shone the flashlight at the tree lean. Movement too fast to track. Just at the edge, the figure again, indistinct, leaning forward slightly, as if inviting me in. The pull in my chest intensified. Not fear, exactly, but a deep, pressing curiosity, a weight that made it almost impossible to look away. Something inside me wanted to follow, wanted to step beyond the line, even though every instinct screamed not to. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to step back onto the road. The beam of light caught the first warning sign again. Its edges were warped further, the letters stretching downward like dripping ink. My stomach lurched. Whatever lived in there, in that forest, didn't just stay hidden. It watched. It waited. It manipulated. I turned to leave. The patrol car's engine hummed softly in the fog behind me. Relief warmed my chest. I thought maybe I'd made it through. But then a twig snapped closer, behind me. My heart slammed. The figure was there, at the edge of the light, just barely visible through the mist. And for a fraction of a second, I thought I saw a face, or maybe the absence of one, staring back at me. I floored the gas, mud splashing, tires crunching over gravel, and the fog seemed to shiver a ripple like the forest had noticed my departure. The signs blurred past, the warning words stretching and twisting until they were nothing more than shapes. Behind me, I swore I heard soft laughter. Or was it the wind? I didn't look back. Even now, driving away, I feel it pressing at the edges of my mind. The forest isn't just a place. It's a threshold. Something waits there just beyond what we see. And I know, when the sun finally rises, the trees will look like any other patch of woods. Safe, innocent, but I remember, and I know, I can't say what would happen if I returned after dark. I only know one thing for certain. Crossing that line once is enough to know the forest keeps its secrets. And some secrets, it seems, are not meant to stay buried. But even as the morning light breaks, I can't shake the feeling that it's waiting. Always waiting. Watching. And I know, deep down, that I might not be the last to see it. I drove past the edge of the forest, fog curling around the headlights like smoke from a dying fire. I shouldn't have been there. I knew that the moment the first warning sign came into view. Its paint cracked and curling. The words "do not cross after dark" smearing in the gloom. But something about tonight made me keep moving. Curiosity, I told myself. Professional duty. Maybe both. The road narrowed, dirt and mud pressing against the tires. The forest loomed closer, black silhouettes of trees stretching skyward like fingers. Then I saw it, a flicker of movement beyond the tree lean, like someone walking, but not quite. My headlights caught a figure, stepping between the trunks. The movement was slow, deliberate, almost human, but the posture was wrong, too rigid, too calculated. My pulse quickened. I stopped the car. The fog thickened, spilling over the hood. Another figure appeared, mirroring the first. And then a third. They weren't hiding. They were watching me, mimicking the way I shifted in my seat, lifting a hand, tilting my head. It made me flinch. For a moment, I could swear they were exact copies of me, stretching into the darkness. I grabbed my flashlight, stepping out onto the muddy road. The beam cut through the fog in a thin, trembling line. The figures didn't retreat. They didn't advance either. They just mirrored me. I raised my hand slowly. One of them lifted its own, precisely the same speed, the same hesitation. I swallowed hard. My instinct screamed to leave, but I couldn't move. Something had rooted me to the spot, a snap of a branch to my left. My flashlight swung, catching a figure crouched low, stalking through the fog. It moved like a predator, but its eyes, if it had any, weren't visible. The shadows shifted unnaturally, and I realized the fog wasn't just around me. It was moving with them, flowing as if alive, swallowing the space between us. I could hear it then, a soft whisper, voices layered over each other, repeating fragments of words I couldn't understand. I backed toward the car, heart hammering. The first figure stepped closer, then paused, tilting its head the same way I had when I looked around. A sickening realization hit me. It wasn't just mimicking my actions, it was learning them, each gesture, each hesitation, copied in perfect delay, as if it had been watching me for hours. I didn't see its face, and yet I felt it staring, analyzing, predicting every move. The fog thickened further, and the headlights seemed useless, casting only faint halos around the nearest trunks. Shapes swirled just beyond the light, and I could swear I saw dozens of figures now, all moving in silent unison, stretching back into the black. Their limbs bent at impossible angles, some too long, some too short, and still they mirrored me. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat, swallowed by the oppressive quiet. I stepped onto the road again, flashlights sweeping wildly. One figure detached from the group, stepping closer, slowly, deliberately. My reflection in the wet mud looked wrong, distorted, like it had been stretched, and then I noticed the figure wasn't a reflection. It was standing upright, moving in time with me, but its shadow didn't match mine. The shadow stretched and twisted independently, darker than any natural absence of light. A gust of wind carried a faint, acrid smell, burnt leaves and iron. My stomach knotted. I realized the forest wasn't just observing, it was responding. The trees swayed subtly, and the fog seemed to push toward me, guiding me forward. I stumbled, catching the car door. The figures advanced just slightly, step by step, until they stood at the edge of the fog, impossibly still. Their motions mimicked mine even as I froze in place. I dared a closer look. Each face was blank, featureless, smooth, as if a mask had been melted over bone. Yet somehow they felt alive. I could feel the intelligence behind the emptiness, the calculated imitation. My flashlight flickered. When it returned, the figures had rearranged themselves. They weren't in a line anymore. They were surrounding me, just beyond reach, but moving with subtle precision. I took a shaky breath. I needed to know what they were. I stepped toward the forest edge, into the fog. The moment I did, the figures mirrored the motion, stepping into the mist, keeping pace, perfectly aligned. My chest burned with panic, but also an odd, creeping fascination. Each step felt like a test, like the forest was assessing me, measuring my resolve. I tried to turn back. One figure mirrored me faster than I moved. Its head tilted at an angle that shouldn't have been possible, and it stopped, waiting. The whispering rose, layered voices forming syllables that brushed the edge of comprehension. My name. Or maybe not. It sounded like my name, but slightly off like a distorted echo. My mind raced, trying to rationalize. Someone or something was learning me, shaping itself to me. But why? A sound of cracking wood. My flashlight caught one of the trees nearest the road. Its branches bent toward me unnaturally, and the figure closest to me stepped through it as if the tree were a doorway. My knees buckled, heart slamming. I stumbled backward into the car, slamming the door. The engine roared to life. The fog swirled around the tires as I tried to drive forward, but the road ahead seemed endless, the trees pressing closer. The figures were moving now, not quickly, not erratically, but with perfect, measured steps, keeping pace with the car without making a sound. The rear view mirror caught glimpses of their movement. They weren't just following, they were aligning, forming a grid of silent watchers, stretching into the darkness behind me. I pressed the accelerator, mud flying, tires spinning. My hand shook on the wheel. For a moment, I thought I could outrun them. Then the fog thickened inside the windshield, curling and snaking, like smoke curling from 100 unseen fires. The forest had closed in. I glanced to my left. A figure was inside the fog, impossibly close, yet still maintaining that perfect mimicry. I raised my hand to block the view, and it did the same, matching me exactly. I realized then that no matter what I did, they would copy me. Every instinct, every hesitation, every fearful glance. The forest wasn't just alive. It was alive with intelligence, and it had eyes that could follow every thought. Suddenly, a gap appeared in the fog, like a door opening. The road ahead was visible again, muddy but real. Relief washed over me, brief and sharp. I hit the accelerator, tires spitting mud, and raced toward it. For a moment, I thought I'd escaped, but then a whispering came from every direction at once, rising to a crescendo of unearthly voices. The figures reappeared, stepping out from the fog in ways that defied physics, forming a perfect semicircle ahead. I slammed on the brakes. The car shuddered. Headlights caught the nearest figure. Featureless face, perfect mimicry. Head tilted exactly like mine had been when I panicked. And yet, in the reflection of the wet road, I saw something else. Not a mirror of me, but a shadow moving independently, growing, stretching, darker than darkness. I realized I had a choice. Step forward into the fog and face whatever was watching, or retreat and leave, knowing it would follow. Always, my hand hovered over the door handle. Every instinct screamed to leave, but part of me, the part that had driven to the forest edge despite every warning, wanted to see it through. The whispers coalesced into a single syllable that froze my blood. Come. It wasn't a command. Not exactly. It was curiosity, invitation, and warning all at once. I gripped the wheel, heart hammering, and pressed forward. The fog swallowed the headlights. The figures merged with the swirling gray, and I felt it then, the undeniable sensation being measured, examined, understood. The road stretched infinitely, trees bending unnaturally, the fog alive, the watchers invisible but present. And I realized, somewhere deep in my mind, that the forest would never let me leave unchanged. It had learned me tonight, and whatever waited within those trees had only begun to understand what I was capable of. I drove on, unsure if escape was possible, knowing only that the forest was patient, always patient, and that some nights, if you drove close enough to the edge, it would let you see just enough to realize something watches back. I found the old recorder tucked behind the filing cabinet, dusty and humming faintly. I didn't know why I reached for it first. Maybe it was habit, old evidence drawers, half-forgotten logs, things that didn't make sense. I pressed play. Static crackled. Then a voice. Shift star like any other. It said, calm but tired. A voice worn down by years. The kind that carries both authority and exhaustion. I leaned closer, gripping the edge of the desk. He said, I thought I was alone tonight. Thought it would be quiet. But there's something following me. Not a person. Not an animal. Something else. The words hit me differently than any normal report. There was fear there, the subtle kind that creeps in slowly, grows roots in your chest. He continued, describing the stretch of highway beyond the town, the strip of woods on either side, and the shadows that moved oddly just at the edge of the headlights. I keep hearing it behind me, he said. Steps, but they don't match mine. They're slower, heavier, or maybe lighter. I can't tell. And when I turn, nothing's there. Nothing but trees. And yet I feel it just watching. I imagine the road he described. Narrow, empty, dark. The kind of place your headlights barely reach. My stomach tightened. He mentioned the radio next. Static at first, nothing unusual. Then a voice, his own voice, crackling through the receiver, delayed, warped. He said he knew it wasn't the dispatcher. He could feel the air around him shivering when it spoke. Keep your eyes on the woods, he urged in the recording. And there it was again, a subtle shift in the trees, a figure, or something like it, gliding between trunks just beyond the beam. It mimicked movement, he said. Every gesture he made, it mirrored seconds later. And when he raised his flashlight, the shapes in the fog, they paused, cocked their heads as though calculating. I pressed pause and ran a hand over my face. The fog outside my office window had nothing to do with the recording, but suddenly I felt it pressing close, like the forest he described was still alive somewhere. My mind raced, thinking about what he said next, how he tried to speed away, how the shape stayed aligned with his vehicle, always keeping pace, silent and deliberate. He'd laughed nervously. That hollow sound you hear when some uncertain panic is settling in. Every instinct tells me to leave. His voice cracked slightly. But I can't. Every step, every hesitation, every glance. It knows. It's learning me. I'm part of it now. I swallowed, tension knotting my shoulders. The way he described it, it wasn't just following, it was studying, understanding. Something ancient, patient, and impossibly quiet. He mentioned the sound of snapping branches. Low whispers layered over themselves, impossible to decipher. My pulse hammered. He said he tried to run. Tires spinning on wet gravel. The fog thickening around the car. And then the realization. It wasn't outside the vehicle. It was inside the mind, shaping perception, bending reality. The recording skipped for a second. When it returned, his voice was low, tense. I thought I saw faces in the fog. Blank, featureless, but alive. I think it wants me to notice. It wants me to understand. He laughed briefly, like a man trying to reassure himself. I shouldn't be laughing. I paused the recorder again, my hands trembling slightly. He was alone in the audio, but I could feel someone or something lurking in the spaces between the words. I replayed the segment. Every time, the whispering background grew more distinct. Faint syllables brushing the edge of comprehension. My fingers itched the pause button, yet I couldn't stop. He described pulling onto a side road, deeper into the forest, headlights barely cutting through the mist. The shapes followed, bending impossibly, moving through the trees like they didn't obey physics. He said he tried to shake them, accelerate, but each time he glanced in the mirror, they mirrored him, perfectly aligned, waiting. Shadows that didn't belong to the light. Motions that didn't belong to anything natural. My chest tightened. I imagined the tires cutting mud, the wind whipping, the air thick with some invisible pressure. He whispered about the smell, iron burnt leaves, something acrid that clung to his clothes. And then he laughed again, but quieter this time, breathless, haunted. I think it enjoys me noticing, testing me. Every move, every fear, it counts. The audio jumped again. When it returned, he was quiet, recording ambient sounds. Just the hum of tires on gravel. The occasional crack of a branch. But something else was there. A rhythmic pulse, almost imperceptible. Like the forest itself was breathing, shifting, alive. My own pulse matched it as I listened. He spoke finally about the final moments of that shift. His voice lowered, eyes no longer visible, but imagined vividly through his words. There's a gap in the fog, a road. I thought I could escape. I hit the gas, and for a moment I thought I had it. But the shapes, always, they formed a semicircle. Featureless, perfect, waiting. And then I understood. The forest doesn't let you leave unchanged. It learns you first. Static crackled. His breathing grew heavier. He said something in a whisper that I could barely catch. It's patient, always patient. The recording ended abruptly, leaving nothing but static and silence. I sat there, hands gripping the recorder. The office felt smaller. The walls pressed closer. Shadows stretched unnaturally in the corners. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the distant traffic, felt layered, deliberate, waiting for me to notice. I realized the final log wasn't just a warning. It was a document of observation, of a mind unraveling in response to something patient and intelligent. Something beyond the road, beyond the fog, beyond comprehension. I put the recorder down, but my hand hovered over it. A question gnawed at me. Had he really left the forest at night? Or had it kept him, integrated him somehow. As it had warned, I shivered, hearing the whisper of something just beyond the edge of awareness. Something that might be watching me now, studying my curiosity, waiting for the next move. I left the office with the recorder in my pocket. The audio burned into my mind. The last shift wasn't just history. It was alive, and it reminded me in ways words can't contain. Some roads shouldn't be traveled, some forests shouldn't be approached, and some recordings shouldn't be listened to alone. The fog outside had thickened since I arrived, curling along the edges of the street like fingers reaching, patient and persistent. I realized then that the story didn't end with the sheriff's final log. It was ongoing. It was waiting, watching, learning, and I had stepped into its domain the moment I pressed play. I slid the old recorder from my pocket again, feeling its weight like a warning I couldn't ignore. The log had ended hours ago, or at least that's what I thought. Static filled the silence of my apartment, thick and oppressive. Then I heard it, a whisper, faint at first, coming from nowhere and everywhere. My own voice. I froze. The word remind, yes, but I hadn't spoken them. Not out loud. Not ever. I shouldn't be here, it said. A phrase I knew I'd never said, yet it came with perfect inflection. That same tired cadence the sheriff had carried. My pulse hit my throat. The apartment felt smaller. Shadows pulled unnaturally in the corners, like the recorder had drawn them closer. I pressed my ear to the device, expecting a skip in the tape, a trick of the speakers. Nothing, the voice repeated. You're still on duty. I backed away, tripping over a chair. My skin crawled. The words were insistent now, looping in different tones, faster, slower, urgent and casual at the same time. I recognized my own phrasing, my own hesitations, but filtered through some strange, alien lens. It wasn't me, but it was me. The first open loop hit me. How could my voice be recording itself when I wasn't speaking? I looked around the apartment, half expecting someone to be there. Only the hum of the fridge answered, low and unyielding. My hands shook. I pressed play on the recorder again, just to confirm. The tape had no new tracks. Static and silence. But then, a soft scratching noise emerged from the speaker, like fingertips tracing the edges of glass. My voice followed it, narrating my every movement. He's watching, it said as I looked at the window. He's always there. I felt my stomach twist. I hadn't said that. I hadn't thought it. And yet, somehow, the words aligned with the strange shapes in the sheriff's story, the patient, watching presence that had followed him. The second loop formed in my mind. Was the forest, or whatever it was, still reaching out? Not just then, but now? Here? I grabbed the recorder and moved to the hallway. My own voice spilled from it. Checked behind the door. I froze at the end of the hall. Nothing but shadows. Yet the whispers persisted, layered and overlapping, growing bolder. The recorder no longer simply repeated the past. It was predicting, anticipating, commenting on my own awareness, feeding off it. Every instinct screamed to drop it, run, smash it. But I couldn't. Curiosity rooted me in place. The words kept coming, looping through my mind. You can't leave. You're still on duty. It never ends. I tried to rationalize. Perhaps feedback from the speaker, interference, some digital glitch. But rationality was slipping. My own reflection in the window seemed delayed, twitching slightly, lagging behind my movements. The room smelled of damp earth and burnt leaves, as if the forest itself had reached inside. My pulse matched the recorder's scratching, synchronized to a rhythm that wasn't natural. I stepped back into the living room, and suddenly the recorder spat a full sentence I had never thought aloud. Do you remember the highway? My chest tightened. That was his final log, the sheriff's last recorded shift. The tape had ended hours ago, and yet somehow I was hearing new layers, built from my mind and his fear. The audio didn't just recall, it constructed. I pressed pause and played, and nothing. Silence. Relief. But it was short-lived. My voice returned, emerging from the walls themselves, narrating every tiny movement. My fingers trembling on the desk, my foot tapping nervously. He's learning your patterns. He's always learning. I realized the open loops were multiplying. Who or what was speaking through me? Was it the same presence that haunted the forest, or had the recordings themselves become a conduit? Something intelligent, patient, and attentive? Every hesitation, every glance, every thought seemed mirrored in that voice. I tried to leave the room. The recorder followed. Its hum resonated in the floorboards, deep and intimate, like it knew my weight, my rhythm, my fear. My own voice narrated every step. He can't escape. Not now. I stopped, hand hovering over the doorknob. I want to call someone. Phone in hand. I realized the device displayed a live waveform, responding to nothing, recording nothing, yet playing all of it. I could see the ghosts of my thoughts, transcribed as sound, projected back at me. I thought of the sheriff, alone on a dark road, shadows learning his movements. Was this the same patience, same study, but now reaching through time and space into me? I felt my stomach knot tighter. The more I tried to resist, the clearer the narration became. My voice, his presence, the forest. It all tangled into one unnerving loop. A soft knock came from the bedroom door. Not hard, not urgent, but precise. I didn't want to move. I knew what would narrate if I did. I didn't move anyway. The recorder whispered, "He's there, waiting, watching. You're still on duty." I sank to the floor, pressing the device against my ear. The static shifted. My own voice asked questions I hadn't thought yet. What happens if I leave? Can I leave? The answer came almost instantly, calm, patient. No, not yet, not while you listen. Time lost meaning. Every few seconds, the voice altered, describing what I saw, what I felt, what I feared. Always accurate, always ahead. The open loops multiplied. Who created this? How is it in me? Will it ever stop? Each question revealed a smaller insight, a micro reward, a truth I wasn't ready for. I wasn't alone. And perhaps I had never been. Eventually, my hands found the recorder's pause button. Silence returned. My body ached. Relief tasted hollow. But somewhere deep in the edges of the room, I knew the observation hadn't stopped. The next layer of narration, the next loop was waiting, patient, calculating. I could feel it, somewhere in the quiet, ready to resume the moment I dare to breathe again. And in that lingering silence, I realized a final loop. The recordings hadn't ended with the sheriff. They had only begun.